It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable?
We out here. Here we are. We made it. Give me a thumbs up in the hive mind if you can hear me. Welcome. Happy to be here on this Sunday cookout. Kickout. So truthfully, the title of today was a bit of a typo. I didn't mean to title it Kickout. But then, good friend, new to the corner, Ethan Cohey says, kick out. I believe it says, I'm ready for some open secrets. Uh-oh. Some open secrets. Well, basically, folks, today we will be finally, as the voice and unrecognized pope of the corner, it's up to me to handle the really tough issues. And so I've assembled a team behind the scenes to help us figure out some very delicate things. And yeah, we're not going to kick out anybody. Nobody's kicked out. Boy, I wish we could kick some out. Boy, I wish we could. But no, not yet. Maybe we'll see. That's not what the point. The kick out thing, that was a typo, but it kind of fits in once you see what we're talking about. We're going to be tackling the Kanye West issue. And we're going to be primarily doing that by the beginning of the newest Peugeot video, where he talks about the coming to a close of the post-World War II consensus. So, that's what's on the menu today. I've already got a little bit of a beat going, so we'll go from there. But I can't stay long today. This needs to be a pretty short. I can't do 4 or 5 hours today. Okay, I'm sorry. I wish I could, but I just got stuff happening in my life. I got to do stuff. I'm taking a page out of Luke's book and say, I just got stuff I got to do. But don't worry, Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow for a chill stream. So no need to fret, no need to fear. If you've got an itch for more V&A, well, the McMo streams are here. Tunji, welcome, sir. Ron, good to see you. The hive mind is aglow with activity. And Tayo has already joined me. Welcome, sir.
I'm not looking forward to this. I'm really not.
Kanye's number one fan, our very own Tayo.
As a member of the Kanye West Stan Club, this is going to be both painful, but at the same time, familiar.
Yeah, I didn't realize this was going to need to be some sort of exorcism for you. We have to heal you of this demon of yeah. Well, we'll get there. Maybe we'll see if the other two people who I had in mind of join us. But I figured I'd start with this Peugeot clip. It's not really the clip. I guess we're going to be watching it from the beginning.
Yeah, let's go. To be fair, I've only seen part of it.
Yeah, so the part he talks about Kanye, and the reason I'm playing him is because I felt like he did a pretty decent job at it. But basically what I'm thinking is I'll play this, and then if you want me to stop it, I can. And we'll just kind of react / give our 2 cents, and then I'll drop the link because we were just in the Discord, and I mentioned that we may be doing this today. And because of that, I know that there's some good takes, some hot takes from some of the very people in our hive mind. So we'll get there, folks. But I do want to say that the thumbnail was brought to you by a certain Matt C. And so McMo and Matt C, first official collab. And I've got to say, if you think that thumbnail is good, well, then you need to check out his series of graphic novels known as the Kyrie series. Not only does he create beautiful, stunning works of art on every single page, but he also has available deluxe copies that come with an annotated version of the comic. All of this, of course, is available on his website, which if I were an actual professional, I would have tracked down. But look it up. Kyrie, Kyrie, I believe. I hope. Anyway, check out Matsy's stunning comic, of which, I need to grift for money so that I can buy all 4 annotated copies of the Kyrie series.
Sounds
But
like we've got the next McMurkofi goal.
yeah, I think so. I think that that's probably what the next goal is going to be. Get McMo a copy of Kyrie, and maybe I even do like maybe we do like a week to week little segment of summarizing the Kyrie I read that week. Maybe I just put them on my coffee table so that when I have guests over, they think I'm like cool, and I can be like, oh yeah, well I know the guy who created that. Fun times, folks, fun times. All right, I need to share my screen. Tayo, do you want to give any preliminary thoughts whatsoever, or do you want to explain yourself a little bit on? I think one primary question is like, why even talk about this at all? And at least for you and me, we share that like at least at one point or another, we were pretty big Kanye West fans, and needless to say, our relationship with him has gone through ups and downs over the years, but has changed quite substantially. And I think I'm probably more on, well, at times I feel more like the type of person, and I can totally understand this point of view of like, why are we even given this attention? But then I also think that Pajot is going to be on the other side of things where he's like, we need to pay close attention to what's going on with Kanye because he's in some way this like important figure. So like, do you have any preliminary thoughts before I play the video?
Yeah, I think I do have to give a bit of my pipeline to Kanye. So the music, first of all, was like, I think similarly to you, it was just captivating to your young me. It was the weirdo, the fringe of the one of my favorite genre, and then it became the popular one, and became influential in a way that's been, just as a fanboy, you follow that journey and you get invested in the story. But what came along with that is Kanye became sort of this seminar figure, almost a prophet sort of a way in which he goes left and everyone's going right, but 5 years later we find out, oh, the right turn everyone took eventually ends up left anyway. And it seems that he's done this a few times now the last 10 years since 2016, in a way that's more pronounced. And I also jumped off the Kanye not bandwagon, but kept paying attention to what he's doing because the music wasn't living up to my expectations. So I was like, okay, I'll get back. I'll pay more attention when the music becomes relevant. And I still wasn't paying attention until Matt C uh, brought it to my attention that his new song is becoming a part of a conversation that I think Nate's been trying to have and those other things. So I think that's why this
So it's
conversation.
connected. It's connected to the woke right conversation, of which
Yeah,
Parlato still doesn't think is a thing, as far as I know. I don't know if I don't know if Parlato has conceded yet to the woke right even being a thing.
yeah. So, and I
But he should have known when we brought it up like 3 months ago that it was at least going to become something that he was going to have to deal with.
yeah, because we're the Kanye West of the code.
Oh damn! Don't say that. Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. Well, with
I
that, let's see what Pajot says about the fool.
This is Jonathan Pedro. Welcome to the Symbolic World.
Should we remix that?
So several years ago, I coined this frame, Watch the Fool. And, the purpose of saying that, I think I said that in 2017, maybe, or maybe 2018, I'm not sure. And so when I started saying that, what I wanted people to be able to do is to watch the fool, especially in a world that was topsy-turvy and upside down, because this is a way that my brother Mathieu framed it, is that when the world is upside down, the fool is the one that in some ways can give you a sign of what is coming, can in some ways restore the world, restore the world right side up. Now, when you say right side up, it doesn't mean, it's not a question of morals, it's a question of a return to order, right? How in some ways the madness of the moment in the fool is kind of joking and turning, and at the end he becomes a victim of his own ploy, and then he kind of almost inadvertently restores things in the right side up, okay? So I started saying that a while ago in 2019 when I saw that, I think it was 2018 or 2019 when our certain Kanye West put out an album called Jesus is King. I kind of could tell. And I've been telling people to watch this particular person because he's like a weird tuning fork. He's someone who catches what is coming. He's a kind of inadvertent mystic, you could say.
Thank you. I was gonna ask you to pause it there.
Yeah, okay, you go then.
I was gonna say this clearly is someone that didn't listen to that Jesus walks is a part of their faith journey. Because I meditated to that song many, many times, and that was my prayer for probably 5 years or so of my life, was just listening to that and praying that. So Jesus is King album wasn't Kanye returning to, it was emphasizing bigger, something that's always been a part of his story.
All right, I want to drill down a little bit. I'm very similar. I probably wouldn't have considered listening to Jesus Walk as prayer for me, but it was certainly it was very salient for me as a young man that like a song like that, even mentioning Jesus, which is kind of the point of the song, but that a song like that could become so popular to me was always like it was just hyper salient to me as a young musician and music lover. But
I didn't even know it was popular because I was in 90 this time. So Kanye wasn't 50 was everywhere. Kanye was like a niche thing that I discovered through my cousin. And
oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean they would play like Jesus Walks in like they'd play the music video in like Hollister or whatever that was big back then, the like basically where you buy clothes to look like Kanye, like collared shirts, like that's where like yeah. So Parlato points out inadvertent mystic. Do we buy this as like a valid concept? I mean, I kind of take it for granted, I think, that like there is something about people who are high in openness and highly competent in their craft that they often get this kind of label. And, it's kind of like one person's inadvertent mystic may be another person's fool. And maybe for Peugeot, that's kind of like the same thing, or at least in Kanye, they mashed together. But I do remember when I was first listening to this, when I first heard this thing, it was kind of interesting to me that I was like, oh, it almost sounds like, and Peugeot's the right age for it, that he like was a fan of, like a big fan of Kanye. Like artistically, like he thought he was cool. So like I was like, that's interesting for one, which Peugeot would be the one to say yay or nay on that. But just that like, is Kanye specifically important to Peugeot because like for similar reasons as to us, me and you, because their music kind of spoke to us. And I should say that like, although Jesus Walks was popular, it wasn't popular in my social circles, it wasn't popular at church or at my Christian school, except for the people who like I showed it to. So
didn't Jesus Walk win like a Dove Award or something like that? Or was it BET Gospel Award or something?
I don't think it would have won a Dove Award. It probably won I wouldn't be surprised if it won a BET Award, but I don't know for sure. I guess somebody in the Hive Mind could look that up for us.
I remember Rapzilla days. That was one of the conversation point whenever the Christian hip hop or hip hop thing came along. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
So like, but it's just the idea of the inadvertent mystic. Like that means that Kanye's not trying to be a mystic. So that means that the title of mystic is somehow put upon him by people like Peugeot, and so that's just like a weird dynamic of like, is he an inadvertent mystic, or like the fool and the upside down world? I'm not sure. Chicken and egg, I guess, or at least I would probably tend to see things closer to what Peugeot is saying. But I am just kind of in thinking through this, noticing that there is a chicken and the egg thing. Like, if we're in an upside down world, then wouldn't the fool actually be the like humble, quiet person who's like not paying attention to politics in any way and is not trying to get attention? Like, wouldn't that still be the person to kind of pay attention to? Or
Sounds more like a saint than a fool. A fool
yeah,
to me is always loud and obnoxious, and Kanye
yeah.
very
So
much fits that bill.
right,
He's very much loud. But I think Peugeot's fame is all about pattern. And if someone, I think you're right. You're right to bring up that it might be salient to Peugeot for a similar reason that it's salient to us. But Kanye is one of those culturally shifting people that if you're paying attention to culture the way Peugeot is, when Kanye starts doing Sunday service and but making albums about Christianity is now even getting closer to Peugeot's world. So he's using a symbolic thing to view Kanye. But I think there is a sense in which, yeah, this is more so Peugeot puts that label on Kanye. He would more so compare himself to Steve Jobs and more secular. I mean, he did call himself Paul, to be fair, Life of Pablo.
I have to pause you right there because look who would join us. But the ringer I didn't tell you about, the guy who's been messaging me in private saying, when are we going to talk about Kanye, this whole Kanye thing? Welcome to the stage with the shades on, the Kierkegaard background.
Whoa.
Check the drip on this man. It's our long lost friend, Lance the lawyer. How are you, sir?
You started talking about Kanye. You got me out of it. I've been in hiding.
This is great. Lance,
wow,
I'm so glad I could pull you out of hiding for this. And since you're the third guy on screen, we pop the V&A bubble. Everybody in the hive mind, welcome back, Lance. Yeah, drop the sunglasses emoji. Lance, still been gone for a while, still knows the etiquette. Knows the etiquette. Yeah. And then the background. I mean, did you make a custom background for me, Lance?
I did.
Oh my goodness. I feel so loved. I'm choking up.
That's cold.
All right.
Yeah.
Lance, do you have any thoughts on? Have you heard anything that we've done so far?
Yeah, I've been listening. Keep it rolling. Stay with Peugeot. I'll jump in the flow with you guys.
Okay, cool. Any thoughts on what Peugeot said so far, or just jump in?
Jump in.
All right.
He's able to. I don't think he does it on purpose, but he kind of is able to sense what is happening and sense what is coming in the future, and he's manifesting it usually in a rather contradictory way. But nonetheless, this is how his life seems to proceed. It doesn't seem to always be good for his own soul, but if you watch him, you can kind of see what's coming. And so, 2018, 2019.
Okay, so that's basically what we just covered. I do want to highlight, though, that it's not good for his own soul. I think that's kind of obvious. And I don't know. Do you guys disagree with it? Like, that's important. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with that.
No, Kanye's a tortured guy. I mean, he's had his ups and downs. The bipolar plays a role in all this stuff, but he's also a genius, and he's authentic. Kanye is always authentic. You may not like what he's trying to point at and what he's trying to do, but yeah, I mean, like, when we come back into it, this latest song. I mean, if you look at the lyrics and you see what he's doing, he's just in a lot of pain and he's angry.
Yeah, I think you're onto something. All right, let's keep listening to Peugeot, because I do think at some point we'll probably have to address the song and the what he's doing in the song. I'm hoping our fourth Avenger, Matt C, can join us, but we'll see.
He put out this album, Jesus is King, and he kind of converted to Christianity for a short time, I guess. And you can know by watching that to see that there were some things happening, and it kind of foretold or showed us that there would be a resurgence of Christianity, which happened during COVID and has been happening ever since. And so we've kind of seen the growth of the traditional churches, especially Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church. I think it's
okay. When he made this point, I was like, that's either the smartest thing I've ever heard or the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because in some sense, Kanye did to connect in such a one-to-one fashion, Kanye making Jesus as king to the resurge, like people coming, new flood of new converts into the Orthodox Church. To me, I'm like, that might be a step too far. And because, I mean, symbolically, it works, right? But if does that also mean that like many of these new converts are going to somehow be lured away from the church for reasons of racism? You know,
No,
like,
I think it's more so, and as the residential, one of the many residential Kanye stan, and not Ye. Lance is also a Ye lover. I think Kanye is very good at pointing to what's going from the fringe, what's going to become acceptable in the center.
Yeah, he's a
And
trendsetter. Yeah, and he sees things. I mean, Kanye is one of those people that can. I love the reverb whenever I'm on McMo's channel too.
sorry.
Kanye sees around the corner. Now, the one thing I would say, like, let's break it out of the Orthodox box. One of the things that's really interesting is that the people who identified themselves as Christians, we've seen the fall of that and the rise of nuns. The latest Pew, and I'm the nerd who follows all this stuff and have been for well over a decade now. There's actually been a tick up in people identifying as Christians, and there has been a flood of people in the Orthodox Church, but the Catholic Church is seeing a certain kind of flood. I think you're seeing in the redeemed Zoomer crowd, like the people that come out of the wake, and he's not one of those, but people that are coming out of the wake of Jordan Peterson. There is a group of people that are flooding back into Christianity. And so I think if you didn't just limit that to orthodoxy, Kanye was ahead of that curve when we thought we were having this downward slide away from Christianity. As things have come unraveled, I think there is a movement, particularly amongst young people, back into the church, which is actually pretty incredible given the collapse we had seen for the previous 30 years.
See, I mean, I can get down with that, but doesn't I mean, it goes deeper. It goes deeper, right? Because Kanye also became a Christian, like went the Christian route after he had kind of done the like, I need to build myself a private community out in the middle of nowhere with just my family and my closest friends. Like, we're going to I'm going to rent I'm going to own this property in Montana, and I'm going to be like
Wyoming.
or Wyoming or what, yeah, exactly. And so like, that also connects to like the Jordan Hall and some other people around here who are like, okay, the answer is intentional communities. Like Kanye did the Benedict option already, and so like what this turn and the failure of his family, to me, I'm like, I don't know how you can kind of not worry for the like it's the parable of the soils, right? Like it's the parable of for at least for the new converts. Like some people are going to come in and their life is going to be forever changed, and they're just going to become solid, like and make mistakes and not perfect or any of that stuff, but like they're going to be you could say, like quote unquote in the body. And then there's going to be some people who are going to be like super on fire and then like burn out. And temptations are going to come and choke it out. The whole, you guys know the parable. I don't have to go through all of them.
Yeah. Right.
But like, does that mean though that there is this temptation? Like what is it just the end of the post-war consensus, or does it not also speak to the end of that consensus leading to the justifications minus Christianity for not giving in to one's sin? Doesn't this just all pretend society outside of the church is going to get way worse, which means that the new converts are going to be even worse and require even more discipleship? Like, do you see where I'm going with it?
Yeah. I see exactly where you're going. Let's let me jump for a bit, because I
just want to tie back to this point. Like, if you also just think about this whole arc of Kanye, because you mentioned he was head of the game, he ends up marrying the original like social media breakout star, attention influencer, who came onto the scene because her sex tape with Ray J breaks out, right? She takes advantage of it, becomes part of this like soulless money grabbing influence thing, and he marries it. He married into that. Like
It's the LinkedIn.
Kanye.
The Kardashians are the LinkedIn Longhouse.
Well, it's if you so like if you think about it, this whole Kanye, when you think about all the things going around him, the levels to the stories and everything else, and that's why I think, Pajot's looking at it from this pattern seeking, and I think he nails a lot of the pattern seeking to a certain extent. But then there's Kanye that. So what I'm most interested in is Kanye the man, because I actually love Kanye the man, right?
Yeah.
And
I think
and so
we will
so
put a
there's
pin in that because
yep,
I think we will end up having to talk about Kanye the individual or the man, as you put it,
Yeah.
because I think that there's no way of escaping that. And it's probably where most of my kind of maybe more interesting ideas might come into play. But let's go back to Peugeot unless you had something, Tayo.
preach it, Mandy. I love that. Yeah, Kanye Speed Brand Society's phases of collapse. There's no doubt.
Let's get back
It's
to
happening
Peugeot.
in kind of more traditional Protestant churches as well. But although you could say the general statistics is still of decline, been happening ever since. And so we've kind of seen the growth of the traditional churches, especially Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church. I think it's happening in kind of more traditional Protestant churches as well. But although you could say the general statistics is still of decline of participation in the church, there's a counter move, which is that young people are coming back, and young people are coming into the church in droves, right? My church is bursting at the seams with new converts. This is happening all over America. And so he, despite himself, was able to kind of perceive that in his move. And so now he's gone in a whole other direction for I think a year now. I don't follow him that closely anymore because it's a little scary. He has even more than a year now. He's kind of started to manifest a kind of Nazi fetish where he is bringing back all that imagery, bringing back the swastika, and is bringing back Nazi imagery. He's also is bringing back kind of KKK imagery and this kind of weird imagery. But as usual, he's doing it in a absolutely contradictory way. In some ways, I keep thinking that Kanye West is 4chan's final form, or maybe like Pepe's final form, because he is doing it, and people can't see the contradiction, which is kind of funny. In the same way that people can see the contradiction in Pepe, they only see the side that they want to see. They only see the side that is kind of salient to them, and they can't see that it's always proposed as a contradiction. His latest song, which I won't even say the words because it's it's like you can look it up. It's a song that let's say calls upon a certain German chancellor, but in the song, the way the song goes is that he uses a racial slur against black people, like calling black people to recognize the German chancellor. And so everybody is saying, don't you see that Hitler would have hated black people? And it's like, you don't understand the contradiction. You can't see that everything about this man manifests itself in a contradiction. And like I said, not to the benefit of his soul. It feels like he's being ripped apart. But if you watch, you can kind of see that this is happening. And it's happening in conjunction with a whole lot of other things that are showing us what is coming, that are showing us what is happening to us. And, I didn't really want to make this video, but it feels like things are becoming so confused. People are so confused to watch what's going on that they are they're struggling to understand. So I guess we have to talk about it. What is happening?
I guess we have to talk about it.
Yep.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's where he gets into more of his it's the end of the post-war era. It's not a strong enough story to hold together Western society. We need to go back to Christianity. If I missed anything in that, it would have been the style and excellence in which he said that. But that my memory is that's basically where it went from there.
Yeah, but that's a good setup to get into the Kanye conversation. And I want to point back to something Lance was pointing to, the ways in which Kanye had been ahead of the curve, both in his glorification of quote unquote OnlyFans models before there were OnlyFans models, and celebrity culture that came with. It wasn't a cool thing, Kanye marrying Kim K. Within the rap culture, it was like looked upon, but he could get away with it because he's Kanye. And then also I agree. When he dropped the Christ is King album, that wasn't when Christianity was popular. No one saw uh, the Vice President's J.D. Vance impending Christian nationalism around the corner at that point. But Kanye was like, he leaned into it. Now again, there were circumstances that pushed him that way. God willing, that same thing can happen again. But I think this version isn't Kanye being ahead of the curve to me. This feels like Kanye just parroting the internet, uh, in a way that Kanye wasn't before. Uh, no one Sunday service wasn't a thing that was on the internet, but the rising anti-Semitic language has been on the internet the last 2 years, basically since Elon took over Twitter, in my opinion. But that's a whole different subject. But from where I'm standing, this isn't another example of that. But what is an example of is the the path of the excitement that people have for converts. I remember the excitement, like all of Christian YouTube was talking about Kanye during the Sunday service, Crisis King days, and the crash out can be epic in ways that, like you said, Lance, it makes me worry for Kanye the person, not so much Kanye the celebrity.
Okay. So the first thing I sent you and Matt C. Tayo is still kind of one of the things that I'm maybe trying to find a good way to put, but it's pretty harsh language, but and it's a little creepy. So forgive me, everyone out there, but I think that you can't talk about Kanye, the man, without talking about the way he uses exhibitionism and voyeurism in not only his art but also how he interacts with the public. Um, you need only look at the way that he likes to dress his wife, and he likes to dress his now wife or most recent ex-wife. But even in his music, there was a sense of him kind of, well, yeah, you can just see it all over because he's recently talked about how pornography like changed his life for the worse, and how all of these dynamics are going on. But so there's that element going on, which is more along the lines of the fetish that Peugeot was talking about. There's also the narcissism, which is like means that he's kind of required to continually play that exhibitionist voyeur game, for the sake of being both kind of a thing.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it narcissism. One of the things that happens in mania when you bipolar and you get into the manic episodes, one of the key characteristics of that is grandiosity, right? Like, and that's how it can lead people to do great things. Like they think that they can, become the biggest clothing mogul and the biggest music mogul, and those sorts of things. And so I don't know that I would call what Kanye's doing is a narcissism. I think when he gets into his manic episodes, I think it's tied up into some grandiosity, and then there's also can be some paranoia when you're in those manic episodes too.
Yeah, that's probably better said.
Yeah, but I think that the bigger point of the pattern, I mean, I'll just point to the rollout of every Kanye's album since Jesus. The rollout always comes with some kind of shock value.
Yeah, yeah. But he also, and here's the other thing. So there's that. But even when you're you don't have to be disassociated, or when you're like, if you're just somewhat manic and not separated or whatever, like you're getting these flow of ideas, they're hitting or whatever. He absolutely knows how to do that. I mean, it goes all the way back to to Taylor Swift. I mean, like Kanye's always touched these third rails that, you know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah,
I think the
I
problem
agree.
is, Lance, that you and I both have mental illnesses that make us relate to Kanye, and so we probably both interpret him as having our mental illness instead of what it might, who knows what it actually is. But I'm like,
No,
yeah,
it is
Kanye's a
it is
narcissist, and you're
bipolar.
like,
To Lance's point, it is bipolar. That's one of the things that um finally came out from him being locked up. Well, at least they say he's bipolar. He doesn't think he is, so that's part of the conversation. But without going there, I think Lance, I don't. I'm not saying I'm saying shock value because that's what non-Kanye fans would call it. But to me, that's actually the way in which Kanye brings things from the fringe to the
Yeah,
center.
yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
that's part of the method of his genius, for lack of a better word. And I think, but there's a it gets it I can see how for non-Kanye fans that becomes stale, where you can just sort of dismiss it and think it's attention grabbing and whatnot. But
I wouldn't equate myself to Kanye either. He is a genius. I mean, Kanye is one of the geniuses of our time. He's connecting on certain frequencies that allows him to see around corners, right? And to see through certain things. Like, I think you don't create the type of music and change genres. And I mean, he became the biggest in music. He became the biggest in fashion. He becomes whenever then he goes out, puts this album out, has one of the biggest Christian albums out there. Like the guy is a flat out genius. And so, but to go back to your point, McMo, and I think that's true. Like, don't project your things you've experienced, although there are similarities onto him. I like Kanye's just this. He is a fascinating figure of our time, and I know you guys mentioned earlier about mystics or whatever. And I don't know what mystic, but he's somewhere in some sort of spirit realm where he's connecting into frequencies that I don't connect into.
Right, and I think hold on one second, because I think that does actually help me kind of formulate what I was trying to say better with that joke, which is not I was the joke was on me and you, Lance, for not being well. Or at least at different times in our lives,
Exactly.
not being unwell. But the point of the narcissism, one, is that, like, I'm not trying to use that, as many people do, as like a derogatory term towards somebody who's just smarter and more Machiavellian than you. Like, that's not what I mean. I mean the self-obsession, which is, one, it's a thing that it could be a trait, it can be something that you do repeatedly. It can be a habit of focusing too much on yourself, but it can also be characteristic of a whole age. And I think you'd be hard pressed to imagine an age more susceptible to that type of self-reflection than people who stare at glass all day long, and sometimes stare at their own image being projected on the glass for hours and hours at end. So, like, I think that there's something about Kanye, being tapped in, quote unquote, to the culture at large. And that
Agreed.
he, to the extent that he shows narcissistic traits, it's because our culture is like that. And so that still, for me, goes back. And I dropped the link in the chat if anybody else wants to dip their toes in the hot waters. Especially you, Parlato, because I don't know what this means, that Ben Shapiro is right. Invest in Birch Gold Group and send it all to McMo. It's Ko-Fi. That's
Can
what
we
he's
all
right
be
about.
happy that Daily Wire imploded? Is that like a universal joy for everyone?
We're not leaving Kanye talk to talk about Daily Wire. Sorry, Lance.
Yeah,
Do that
yeah,
on
yeah.
Jacob's channel.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah, this is the bald conservatives of the corner's happy hour. The only hour they're actually happy. No, I love the Lance and Jacob political streams. They're some of my favorite to be in the hive mind for. Especially when Jacob's happy, which is only noticeable. It's barely noticeable above his normal, like, perturbed. But it's good. It's good. All right, we got another guest, and boy, oh boy, we got another set of shades. You know what that means, folks. He gets the solo layout. Welcome, Josh. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going, brother?
I mean, let's see. Exit solo layout. That's what I'm looking for.
There you go.
All right, let's get back on track. So,
Yes,
let's. So there's. I think that maybe the question that my mind keeps revolving around is, because he is this kind of figure that, in many ways, at different times in his life, at least retrospectively, you can look back and say, "Oh, that was a little bit ahead of this cultural movement. Oh, that was a little bit ahead." So, what does the song HH, and I want to talk about it in a nuanced way. But Ty, did you have something you wanted to get to before that?
No. That was the question I was
Okay.
going to.
Okay.
So
Let's try to think through the song, because but in both aspects, both the provocateur aspect of it, but also the kind of, and this is one of the points Matt C brought up, the kind of emotional exhibitionism, and, like, I can't talk to my kids, I'm famous, everybody thinks I'm crazy on Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. What do we make of that kind of? Is he being ironic? Is he speaking for himself? Is he speaking for a certain type of, disaffected young man? Like, what's going on with the song? Go.
I think there's like I said, Kanye's rollout comes with a little bit of that vulgarity, which usually is a method in which he uses to bring something from the fringe into the center. It's usually frowned upon in the beginning, but it's found to be right. So I think the meat or the substance of the song is the pain that it was talking about. However, I think this is cringe. Kanye being cringe because he's done the vulgarity thing better. Um, he the black skinhead had KKK symbolism as well, and he did that on SNL. So he's played this truck before, and the HH thing I think is just Kanye's too unlike like the rest of us now, and he's sinking off that. But that's because I already started with the premise of I don't think Kanye is uh seeing as far ahead as he used to. But if we're going to go with the premise that yes, he is, and he's still got his finger to the pulse of the culture, then I think Author Bros and the excitement over the new converts, a new conversation should be had to about the discipleship required. And I think that's what Peugeot was coming at, but he went liberalism, which I
Okay.
don't.
Beep, beep, beep. Breaking news. Jan God with his worst take ever. Jan God officially with his
Yeah,
worst take
I
ever.
would ban you. That's ridiculous. That's actually
Well,
yeah. Well,
I just think this was so on point for Kanye. Like Kanye has been pushing back about this cancel culture that you can't talk about certain things.
Yep.
He has done that has been a through line that he has seen here. I think the heart of his song. So first off, you know what I really hated? I mean, that is a summer anthem. If he just wouldn't have used this song with this, those lyrics with this song, I mean, dude, it is a killer. It's a summer
That's the
anthem.
point.
Yeah, I know,
That-
man. It's so hooky.
Well,
Like it's so hooky. But I wanted to
it's-
say this, and you can jump in, Josh.
No,
So
so
I
say
think
that.
the heart of his song is this. So he drops in the Hitler clip, right? And I'm like, oh my God, Kanye. But what was the translation of the Hitler clip that he
oh, you
dropped?
looked it up.
Well, Kanye posted it. Whether you believe my work is this is the translation of that Hitler clip. Whether you believe my work is right, whether you believe that I have been diligent, that I have worked, that I have stood up for you during these years, that I have used my time decently in the service of my people, now cast your vote. If yes, then stand by me as I have stood by you.
Man, could really write a hell of a speech, right? Hell of a speech giver. That Hitler guy, you know, what great oratory skill. That's a dog whistle, Lance, and that will not be allowed on the Big Mud stream.
But if you think about the through line, if you go all the way back when he said George Bush, what did he say? George Bush
George Bush
hates
doesn't care about black people.
or hates black people or
He
something. So
does
he's
not care about
got
people.
that, and then he started doing all the stuff with Trump, and then he had those shirts, White Lives Matter. Just think, and then he's also trying to get black people to get artists control of their music. He's just done all this stuff. He's felt he's done it for the culture and for the people, right? And so I think that thing is he's using those own, like at the end of the day, like I think that right there you can see the angst in his lyrics, but that there is why did he release that song in that way? I think it encapsulates all the things that Kanye's kind of been about.
So there's a lot to not address there, but there's a lot of things I would want to double click on there. But before that, I want to give Josh a chance to speak, and also shout out to Connie. She commented on my last weekend's live stream. I don't know if I've seen Connie around, but I'm glad she's here. She was pointing to the autism and the psychiatric illness. So the meds, and then apparently, and I didn't know this, that apparently Kanye thinks of himself as having autism, which brings in a whole nother,
Oh,
is
yeah.
Kanye meeting on the Hill? Is he is he corrupting the youth of the Hill because of his superpowers of unintentional mysticism? But Josh, what say you, sir?
No, I kind of agree with Lance that it seemed on brand, but it was obviously shock, right away when I first, when I saw it before it got taken down everywhere. But one thing I'd say is like, or sorry, or first, am I too loud?
Sound good to me. There's a little
Okay.
problem with your signal,
You're
but
cracking up a little bit.
it's audible.
Okay. Okay. So as an artist, I think he floats on spirits. Like he's always going to be in the trail of an archetype or reaching for an archetype. I think he's identifying with Hitler as a man against the world. I think he's identifying with this my struggle. I think he's literally getting possessed by the artist, the H guy. He was an artist. He was charismatic, and and what did he use? He used his voice. Kanye is a lot of things, but his lyrics and his charisma of his music is really his lullaby. I mean, like Lance said, this was everybody's saying it that this is a catchy song. And so it's catching fire. It caught on. And so everybody's always wondered what happened in Nazi Germany that got everybody to go absolutely insane and follow this guy or whatever. And
Well, that's
I
a
think
great
Kanye,
point. Like,
well, I think, yeah. I think Kanye is just doing that. He's. I don't know that he's all the way aware of it, but he's pointing us towards our basement of ultimate evil. This is your ultimate evil. You want to call me your ultimate evil? I'll become your ultimate evil right in front of you. I think that's what his evil brain is, or his like left brain is doing to him.
No, okay, hold on. I gotta.
Yeah,
You said too much at the end there. His evil left, the evil left brain is a step too far. But
Yeah, there was a lot there.
but like, I think that the point. Hold on. We got you. We got you. Hold on. We got you. We're just poking at you. But you also said a lot of stuff that was great, and I do think that there is that element of like the devil went down to Georgia, that connection with like musicianship and the devil being a musician, and so like there is that element. I wonder to what extent part of the problem is like because Hitler and like it makes me think of Kendrick's song, the one I'm talking about, Taya, from the
Yep.
new album, Reincarnated. It's a very similar like, oh yeah, like I didn't make a deal with the devil. I'm possessed by the devil kind of a thing. And that's the only thing that could explain the amount of like power and influence I have with my artistry.
If you
Is
want
that
to
if it
find out more about that song, let me plug in. Foxman did a great breakdown of it.
Yep,
And he
President
actually-
Foxman has the definitive TLC breakdown of that song. So go find that. If somebody with a wrench wanted to find it and post the link in the comments, I would be very grateful. But yeah, I think that like there are elements of both the kind of mental illness, pushing the boundaries, the artistic genius spirit, like having a type of what maybe looks like on the outside a type of clairvoyance or something like that, or just a real connection to the collective unconscious. There's a lot of ways that of kind of putting into words um like the phenomenons that we're kind of discussing. And I think what makes a lot of this different, like there's a few peculiarities and particularities about the time we're living in right now that I think needs to be addressed, because some of the stuff that you were saying, Lance, and some of the stuff that you were saying, Josh, I kind of found myself thinking, oh, but that's kind of always been true, right? Like it's always, there's always the like the musician and the devil myth, or the like listen to the crazy guy, or like that when you get somebody with their back up against the wall, they'll say anything, kind of like there's all these like tropes that we could draw on. But so I want to focus a little bit more the discussion on the particularities of now, namely being the political one, which is the war, the Israeli Gaza war, sparking at least the type of maybe there's a chicken and the egg discussion we could have too about the vibe shift and the kind of the like the squabbles of the conservative right versus the traditional religious right. Like all of those things are at play. But I think that Kanye wouldn't be pressing these particular buttons, one, if he weren't hanging out with people like Nick Fuentes, but two, if there weren't
general, and some of this is Elon with X, but the vibe shift loosening up and kind of, so like if there's more and more free speech, then the only thing that gets attention is going to be the more extreme uh concepts. And so, yes, to what extent is this a pointing towards the end of liberalism, like Peugeot was kind of pointing towards, or different people will think he's trying to save it with liberalism versus he's trying to explain it with liberalism, descriptive, prescriptive, all of that. But yeah, I wonder what we make of the actual particular time that we're in right now and how it kind of pertains to what this song means, because it's of Kanye's always been able to make a banger, but one of the other particularities of
Yep.
this time is that this is the first time, to my knowledge, that his song, that the content within the work of art is what's gaining the attention. Like his strategy for years has been to make good music, quote unquote, and then the name of his label. But and then he gets to be crazy essentially um in public as a celebrity, and that's what garners the attention. But this time
The
it's like
music
he
is
can't
crazy.
he can't be crazy enough anymore. Like people don't pay attention to him being crazy because of, like, really the only people that'll have him on is like academics and Alex Jones, which have huge audiences, but uh you know, he's not getting the looks from the Grammys anymore. He's not being invited to the Met Gala kind of a thing. And so I wonder to what extent that's playing a role in, like, okay, now the song actually has to be pushing the boundaries. But the thing is, he actually has done that before too, with songs like Black Skinhead. So I wonder what we make of this. And add to the stage, Alan, quarter citizen, welcome, sir.
What's up, guys? What's up? What's up? What's up?
Well, I was gonna point to Piers Morgan of all people, because Piers Morgan is sort of capitalized on the attention from October 7th in a similar way that I think Kanye has. Piers Morgan's channel is like, Piers Morgan's always been good at be doing exactly what he's doing now on YouTube. I watched him on morning TV for years, doing it on Brexit, and during COVID, he was doing all of that. But he reached a new level because the attention from that that war, I think, has triggered conversation around liberalism for reasons that I'm sure Lance can eloquently explain. And I've seen my algorithm has fed me enough that I sort of get the gist as well. So I think that's the undercurrent that this song came into. Not so much as, that's why I'm saying Kanye isn't ahead of the curves, because he's speaking to what's already has been proven to be a good formula for getting attention. Now, the substance of the song, the pain that is showing, I think, is what is trying to get across, and the attachment of the what's of the moment is an might can be seen as an attempt to get his voice out. He's like Young God said, he can't see his kids, and a lot of the people that he once trusted betrayed him. If you've been following the Kanye saga, it's actually I mean, Candace Owens. Candace Owens has also infested me, so I'm getting my a lot of my Kanye info from her as much as other Kanye blogs. But he's experienced a lot of betrayals and people falling by the wayside around him, and he's actually been the one person that everyone can say, "Oh, yeah, they tried to cancel this guy." There's been an actual, many people can say that, but Kanye is one of the ones that you can say that about. I mean, bank accounts, uh, contracts, all of those things got happening. But most importantly, the fracture between his family. And I think, well, the Kardashians they're still going to Met Galas. They're still plugged into the system, the liberal hierarchy, the ones that are still benefiting from it. And Kanye is now outside of the system, so it might feel more at liberty to, you know, speak more to it, but I don't think it's being a prophet the way, quote unquote prophet the way that he once used to. Also, I think that your point about this isn't the first banger Kanye has dropped in the last year. There's a beat that got used by Bad Baby, unfortunately, but I think it did come out on his last album. That Kanye fans have been waiting on. Just drop this, And there's been many of that every year that Kanye is just going to drop something that's absolutely fire but doesn't get the attention. But I think the reason this one's caught so much attention is because he's very explicit in his HH and, you know, yeah, all of that. But to your point about speaking to the moment, to me, what's most interesting about the Kanye saga where we're currently at is that I don't think that Jesus is King on the Sunday service was just a phase. It wasn't just prophelicity. I think that was like Kanye's always been authentic to Lance's point, and his authenticity is what got him through a lot of like quote unquote cancellations is because people his fans see him as being authentic, and so they're more forgiven. And as because I'm a Christian, if someone's gone through the experience of having an encounter with Jesus that changed them in a way that changed Kanye such that it radically changed all of his life to be about worshiping Jesus. He made a Dunder album where all of his features were required to not swear, and all of their verses was somehow glorifying Jesus, even if all the other songs were about killing people. So he had the cultural cachet to command sort of an actual Christian hip hop album in ways that CHH artists have tried to do for McMahon, like 10 years in the 2010s. So I think that experience, because I believe that was a true experience, where Kanye's currently at, I don't think is detached from his story and encounter with Christ. Meaning that the same way Peugeot pointed to Kanye's Jesus is King, um, maybe not being causally actively causing the revival, the Christian revival, but it points to the stage that we ended up in. There's a chance in which a lot of the JQs and the JAs that Kanye is playing with is also what, if you pay attention on Twitter, some of the more radical converts into Christianity are playing with. And I think that's a real question that I think Christians are going to have to, um, wrestle with.
Yeah, and I think that was well said, Tayo. By the way, Donda, I thought there was I liked a lot of that stuff.
That's the last Kanye album I loved.
Yeah. One of the things that, and this ties into the Pajot video, which is everything's coming apart. What we've talked about, meaning crisis, everything around here, we're seeing that. One of the things that Kanye's, and I think this is something, and you can speak to this, Ty, if you'd agree with me on that. He's consistently said that all these systems where we have this whole woke culture, social justice warrior system that supposedly was, focused on all this systemic racism and everything else. And he even called that out because he's just like, this whole thing is rigged, right? And I want to throw the game board and toss it up and to really reset things. And it's kind of interesting, when I think about with the Pajot video, when he started talking about, hey, we're getting to the end of this World War II consensus, right? And this whole idea of, that even saying Hitler is worse than saying someone's like Satan, something like that, right? And so, and whether it's conscious, I think Kanye's more conscious on those things than we think. But I think he ultimately sees a system that is oppressive, and not in the ways that the powers that be would have you believe them to be, right? And I think what Pajot kind of touched on is this sense of he's embracing the highest form of evil, in terms of trying to invoke that, as he sees this system, which ultimately is oppressive, but not in the way that our bureaucratic betters and ideologies would have us believe. What do you think about that, Tayo?
That sounds to be like you're saying Kanye is the woke right. Because
whatever that. By the way, I intentionally don't even know what that means.
Let me just explain what I mean, because it's a joke, but I'm actually not really joking. Because the language of oppression and the language of the system being against us was the language of the woke left, and it was a drum that they banged on a lot. And I am seeing a version of that being echoed in the this is more of a fringe character than even Kanye, but the Andrew Tate of the world, the e- escaping the Matrix
Yeah.
pipeline
He
from the red
that's
pill.
yeah, he quotes that in the song, right? I'm stuck, it feels like I'm stuck in the matrix.
Y-
Um, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, Lance, I want to hear what you have to say, like with the connection to the quote on like right woke right phenomenon. But before that, Ty, I did want to mention this would have been the perfect conversation for our anonymous Hotep friend to join us in the on stream
Yes.
today, you know?
Shambhala, I think, is going by now or something like that.
Yeah,
We
I
have a
don't know.
hotep. We have a hotep in here.
I don't know if he self-identifies as Hotep. It's a friendly jab if you're watching this out there, brother. But no, he's got a good. What's there's Gaydar. What PDK was talking about this yesterday on the stream. There's Gaydar, and apparently there's like Hollendar, and but he's got a good. He keeps us on the straight and narrow. Makes sure we're not a racist outfit here at the TLC. I appreciate his work, you know. But yeah, what do you make of this whole like woke right phenomenon? And is Kanye using that, or is that something that he's like running to? Because
Well,
you could like even at the time where he did the Christian turn, there was still the question in my mind is like, does he mean this? Is this authentic or is he using this?
yeah, I think he was authentic. I think Kanye is always authentic. So I think that was 100% where he's at. So I would just say, as it relates to this woke right, I intentionally, when things come up like Q or woke right, like I don't even know what that means. Like I literally, like I haven't even looked up to see what people are trying to mean by that. Whatever, people start throwing these labels around. So I literally, I hear people talking about woke or whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever, not even really paying attention to that. What I think, here's where I think, but I think I could touch onto this or whatever. And this goes to the authenticity. I think Kanye is different because the woke right could be the victims and all this other sort of stuff or whatever that might be. I think Kanye just authentically sees, because there's not fake oppression, there is real oppression. There's real systems that aren't working well for people, right? Like can we all just agree that it seems as if political systems or wherever we're at, something's not working. I think Kanye authentically does that. Now, see, he does all sorts of things that pisses off everybody, right? The free Gaza to the, like he's all like just he doesn't ever fit in anybody's box. He couldn't fit in a woke left box, although he would say things that might sound woke left. He can't fit in whatever this new woke right box is because he doesn't do that. I do think that Kanye is authentic, and and again, that doesn't, I don't, like, for example, I wouldn't want one of my sons to go through the life that Kanye's going through. That would not be what I would
So,
want someone,
like,
the life I would
do
want
you
someone to live.
your Lance? I'm sure you remember Kanye's interview on Sway, where it was being oppressed by Nike. Oh yeah, it was Nike at the time, and he one of my favorite Kanye songs of all time is from Yeezus, "Strange Fruits,"
Yeah.
where where it invokes the language of being and what he was going through
All time great.
was they wouldn't let him design clothes that he wanted to. Now he turned that into making $1 billion company and the flex of that. But Kanye has always used hyperbolized is what he's going through and projected that onto everyone. That's
Yeah.
a Kanye trope as a Kanye fan that we're all familiar with. So in this instance, Kanye has been his accountant, his trainer, his publicist. When he looks around and it says, all of these Jews have benefited from him, but they've also contributed to is what he sees as his downfall. I'm not surprised that Kanye, knowing the pattern that I've just said, jumps to the the extreme of yep, it's all the Jews are the problem of all of the world, and using the language that he's using. But I don't think it's I yeah, it's just that I'm not surprised. This fits within the pattern of Kanye, you like hyperbolizing what he's going through in his uh creativity and openness and all of the things McMo spoke about earlier.
Yeah, but Mo, would you maybe, with it as it relates to Kanye, would you be open to the idea that, because there was something in the chat here, could we give him too much credit? He's actually just a provocateur leveraging rage mechanisms. You could say that of sure. I think he knows how to push certain buttons. I just, I think on Kanye is authentic, and I don't think he falls into these labels or these camps. I think he
Yeah,
might know how to manipulate those for, like Sherry said.
I don't think that's responding to, because I also believe Kanye is being authentic, but being authentic doesn't make you right. That speaks to most thing about narcissism. Being authentic can lead to a self obsession where you think your problem reflects on the rest of the world, and
Oh,
everyone's
no, no,
going
no. I would agree
through.
with that. I don't think he's, and I think he would. I agree with that 100%, Tile. Right? Like, I think that's obvious by watching Kanye's arc. Right? I think you nailed it. I would just say that I wouldn't. I don't think that he's. I don't think he falls within any of these camps that gets captured by what people might want to put you in, these camps of, I don't know, certain ideologies or certain biases or something like that. Does that make sense?
It might not want to be, but when it was doing Sunday service and making Jesus is King album, it was called a Christian. When he's saying HH and people call him anti-Semitic, I think that's not an inaccurate. Us Kanye fans can be like, no, no, he's gone through pain. He's not. It doesn't mean it. He
Well, yeah,
deserves.
we will put labels
Uh,
on it, and he can exhibit certain things, and I'm not saying that, right? Like, he's certainly how he might be acting or the things he's producing or so on and so forth. I think we can do that. I guess my simple thing is I would push back on trying to put him within certain boxes, because as we've seen, Kanye can't be contained by any box.
Yeah, I guess what I'd want to like throw into this is like, I think Kanye is incredibly good at identifying trends in society that are on the rise, and like whatever, whether that's because he's bipolar, because he's narcissistic, mentally, whatever. Like, it almost doesn't matter calling it mental illness, because it's like, well, if it's serving his, you can't just say like negate it because it's mental illness, just like, oh, it doesn't matter because it's, it's like saying like, oh, Shaquille O'Neal's only good at basketball because he's 7 feet tall. It's like, okay, but he's still a million, like, it's like, okay, like you could break things down and be like, oh, it only happened because of this. But I mean, obviously, he's incredible at identifying what is sort of out of the money that's on the rise. And, it's just interesting to see him as like these divining rods poking at things. I mean, his George Bush doesn't care about black people sort of began the rise, this rise of like woke identity politics that was a different strain than I would say, or I wouldn't even call it woke, but like black identity politics that was different from other strains. So like the fact that he's able to poke at things that are on the decline, and what he's poking at, things on the decline and things on the rise, is like the post World War II consensus and our understanding of like the only, if you want to know who a bad guy is, you just, oh, he's a Nazi in the movie. Indiana Jones fights Nazis. These people fight. If you just need a copy paste bad guy, it's these people. And it's like, it's him poking at that. I don't know if it'll fully, because I don't think he's like it's fully over. But the fact that he's poking at it is fascinating, because it's like, yeah, I think people do sense that like that no longer, that label for the eternal bad guy is no longer as powerful. And so it's just interesting to see what he's doing. And like, when we're saying he's bad, is it like, well, are you looking at him being bad from the system's perspective or from your perspective? Or like, where are you getting that he's bad? Is it because your teacher in high school says you shouldn't say bad words? You shouldn't, carve a swastika in your desk with a, little knife that you have in your pocket? Is it because you read up on World War II, because you're a Christian? So, when people say, oh, he's wrong, it's like, are you saying that because you've heard other people say that? Or are you saying that because you think that? Where are you getting these ideas from? And I think he's pointing out the difference of like, you've been told these things, but like you need to now think of a defense and think of a way of why you actually disagree with him.
Well, and so I think this ties into the Pajot video, and I shared with McMo when we were DMing back and forth on X about Kanye. I heard the song, and it was a banger. Like, I love the song, But then I self-censored myself to not listen. I didn't want to listen to it because of the shocking content, right? And then I called myself a derogatory term with McMillan. I'm like, am I just being, let's just say, wimpy? Because I'm self-censoring myself to even listen to the song because it touches on what Pajot talked about, like this whole Hitler thing, right? You call someone Hitler, then that's become worse than the devil in society and these symbols and so on and so forth. And so, I've listened to the song a couple times because I know what the lyrics are, and to me this is a Kanye protest song, right? And it's specific, and I believe his heart about it is it's a protest song about he's in pain, and he's speaking out against being abandoned and canceled. But even though I know that, I still don't want to. There's something in me that because of the lyrics, it touches a place that I self-censor myself to not listen to it.
That's been. I mean, you've been a Kanye fan long enough, Lance, to know that there's always that in Kanye's repertoire. I mean, is on From the Life of Pablo, the video to Famous was just a whole bunch of naked bodies, and it does that to sort of push the boundaries. Kanye's, if you've been a Kanye fan,
Hold on,
this
not
long,
just any naked bodies. There was a very specific list of naked bodies that all
naked
spoke to
bodies,
something that pushed different boundaries in different ways.
yeah,
I remember
and
Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Taylor
Donald
Swift
Trump,
all being
Taylor
included.
Swift. I think Kim's body was also included. It was. It's Kanye. So Kanye's been, if you're a Kanye fan, you know Kanye is good at pushing the boundaries such that you discover, okay, this is where I stop. I've seen enough people started off as Kanye fans drop off when he put on the MAGA hat, or when he went to TMZ and said that slavery was a choice. A whole bunch of people dropped off and said, okay, this is where I'm at. So Kanye is good at just being quote unquote his authentic self, which I think he is being, and then the way you see yourself in Kanye, you're like, okay, this is my line, and you sort of drop off. So I think there's that to Kanye, but the song Yay, the album Yay was that was an album he made after he'd been the most cancelled that he'd been up to that point, and what he did there is different to what he's doing now. The music he made there then, where he spoke about his love of his daughter, what having a daughter meant to how we viewed women, all of those things. That Kanye is capable of that. That those are ways which Kanye can express his feelings and through his art that he's not doing on this song. That this is just a catchy song that he's been in music long enough. He knows how to make a catchy tune and implant lyrics into your mind. And this isn't the song. This is the type of music I love Kanye for. On like Saint Pablo, for example, is Kanye pouring his heart out of a beautiful soulful beat and explaining his craziness in a way that you're like, this is why we say he's being authentic. Because in his world, in his story, he can tell you this is how I got to where I got to, and then this is where I make the mistake. Kanye is not just a narcissist; he's also the most. The Cousins is an example of Kanye being the most vulnerable person as an artist and exposing himself. So he's able of doing both, but I think he's done it better. And this to me just feels more like a plugging into the what's popular, which it might need to because we cancel so much.
Yeah, but
one of the types of narcissism is called covert narcissism and or vulnerable narcissism. But please don't let me interrupt whoever's about to talk.
Yeah, you just interrupted me, and McMo always does that, and it's not a big deal, but I'm just someone who always gets interrupted, and that's just kind of the story of my life, McMo. So I'm always the one who's getting put down, always the one getting cut off, but that's fine.
Enjoy, and finally, last one, there's no art for the corner. If you're a smart person, if the corner helps you, and then you go and make art, that is not art corner, that is just art you made. If you make art for the corner, that's just called garbage. Just pick it up, put it on your fridge, your grandma laying it on the fridge. That's not for us. If it's art for the corner, it's art for the garbage, okay? Art is just art, period. If the corner teaches you, if it helps you see something more clearly, and then you put that into your art, and then people like the art, great. If you make art that only can be viewed by people in the corner, that's just called garbage, and it belongs in the garbage can. And that's just the way art works, okay? Guess what? I've done a lot of comedy, most of my comedy goes directly in the garbage, okay? It's bad, it wasn't good, nobody laughed, my parents didn't even laugh It was garbage that went in the garbage can, and then you started over. So you're not going to make art for the corner. You're never going to have our own art galleries. This is not how art works.
The Broken Clock Tower Discord is going to clip the hell out of this little rant. It is going to become branding.
Well, yeah. Enough. I'm tired of hearing your excuses.
Amen.
Yeah. You take the pill, you put it in the peanut butter, you give it to your dog. Enough, folks. We're done. We're done pretending we don't know how to give the pill to the dog. Okay, you know what an union archetype is. Take enough.
Amen.
It's not that complicated. They're nice people. They want to be your friend. Don't scare them off. So, that's definitely one thing I wanted to get. Like, yeah. Well, yeah.
Dang. Thank you, McMo. Appreciate that. Tayo, I just want to make the point that I don't think you can there are plenty of artists rappers and musicians who talk about like, oh, I had a daughter and now I have these new feelings. Like, I don't think it's fair to cut off the line of like, well, this is legitimate and this isn't. Like, even if it does have a sheen of like sort of like Kiss, the band Kiss aren't actually Knights of Satan, but like they're using that as like a way of tapping into the culture. And a lot of the hippies weren't actually hippies, oh wow, they were using that as a way of tapping into the culture, but like that's because there was a strong spirit of the age that was there to be tapped into.
Acid.
The point I was making isn't to say this isn't legitimate. I think I've said many times that the substance of the HH song is the pain that is talking about. But I'm just speaking to the quality, because there's a lot of plaudits being given to the song as being catchy. And my point is, Kanye is not. I mean, it can make catchy songs, but to me, the best Kanye songs are the ones where he's being vulnerable and telling a story of how he got to where he got to. And this, to me, is that, but with the veneer of the HH. And like I said, it might need to do that at this point because he's been so put into a corner that that's his only option. I'm willing to listen to that argument as to why that's the route that he chose. But I'm not trying to diminish the substance and say that he's not trying to express that missing his daughter and missing his children isn't being cut off from his family isn't a painful thing. But a Kanye album would include a song about why getting arrested in Italy for having sex with his quote unquote wife was a dumb thing to do, and things like that. This is all just woe is me, everyone's against me. There's no, this is where I went wrong.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd add is like, I understand that, but I just think that like Kanye touches like, it's not just his like ability to be self-reflective, it's his ability to integrate his own feelings with things going on that are third rails in society. You're not just like, oh, I want to know what's going on in Kanye's life. His self-aggrandizement, the fact that he like does these gigantic things and touches these huge topics is part of the dialogue. And so like, it doesn't surprise me that he has to, say George Bush doesn't care about black people, that he says these things that tap him in. Not everything is going to be fully reflective of like a platonically good Kanye West album. Like what he's doing here is making way. Like the fact that he has so many eyes on him allows him to make an album that people would actually listen to. Like, like there's so many people who put out good music, who have no.
I don't think Kanye has a lot of eyes on him. Vultures 1 and 2 weren't like renowned as being great, and there were a lot of HH type stuff that just weren't as explicit as the HH song was. So to me, this comes off more corny in delivery because it's just like you said, he is very good at noticing the trend and weaving what he's going through into the trend. And I've said, he's got many reasons given the context of his life to be able to do that. He can point to many examples of the type of betrayals that he's experienced and how we got to that. So that's I'm not lost on that at all. But I do think that basically what I'm saying is I want a Kanye album, not just a song. And I think is the the singles that he's dropping is don't tell me that he's making an album. And him being an academics, maybe he can't because he's been so put into the corner. But then explain that, go into that, not just the HH. And I know he did an interview with Piers Morgan that he walked out of. That was a that was an example of where old Kanye, or more maybe in a different cycle of his bipolar, would sat down with Charlemagne and explain what it meant by George Bush doesn't care about black people. And it wasn't just a thing. It was like Lance said, it was being authentic about how we got to where we got to it. If we was able to explain how we got to where we got to this, then I think actually he's tried to do that and no one listened, to be fair. So he did that with Candace Owens. So maybe you're right.
All right, I want to bring in something that we haven't really discussed yet, and it was one of the first things that Matt C noticed, which is Cousins and Heil Mustache Man come out at the same time, or relatively the same time, within a few weeks or months or whatever. And so, what do we make of Cousins as a song and its relationship? Because Matt's point was basically like, can't you guys see that this is a man at his wits' end, at his like emotional rock bottom, and it's ultimately a cry for help. And so that, I think one of the things that Matt wanted to double click on a point towards was this idea of kind of male crash out or intense emotion, or what does it mean for society to contend with some of the darker emotions within the quote unquote masculine? Any of that spark any of that for anything for you fine folk?
Yeah, I think that kind of comes back to where I first came in when you think about Cousins. I do have to admit I'm biased. Like I will listen to every Kanye drop the day it comes out, and have for well over a decade, right? So that puts me in a certain camp that I'm interested in what Kanye's doing, right? I do think that he's at a point that he's in a lot of pain, and he's in an extreme place. And I think one of the so how I can connect personally, and you're right, it's not exactly the same, but I can I can connect to Kanye because I put myself in extreme situations, right? I was that I think I even shared in our DMs, McMo, where I said my aunt always said I was a little boy who just loved going to church, and here I'm out running around doing cocaine and hanging out in places with people that I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, right? And the guy who's doing that also knows that he's the little boy that loves Jesus, right? So I can relate. And then you can be in really dark places. He's in like for me, for someone who has empathy, where he's at whatever iteration he's in right now, I feel a lot of empathy for Kanye, because I think with Cousins, I think you can see here with HH, you can see the pain in the lyrics and kind of where he's at. I see him and kind of what's been happening over the past few years with, is it Bianca? Is that right? That's been alarming to me, just for someone who, whatever, like if I do care about Kanye, but not in the same way of a true friend that I know that we're in a relationship with. But as someone from the outside, I've sensed he's playing with dark, painful spirits, and he has been for a long time. But I've had periods in my life where I've done the same.
Well, I think one thing to that, which is hard, is he's showing the dichotomy of someone who wants reactions at a cultural level and at a level of like grandiosity, and you look at great figures in history, and like they do have this sort of like almost they refuse to just be content with their lot in life and what's in front of them. They sense that there's some greatness, and then at the same time I think you do see the like my relationships are breaking down, I'm struggling with very basic things. So it's a dichotomy of like, it does suck because I don't think there is an easy answer of like, yeah, if you want to be a larger than life figure, you can't be contented with the things that are of life. You can't just have a normal wife and kids. Kanye's not going to like make these songs and then go home to his white picket fence and his wife and 3 kids and be like, oh, well, sorry, that's my home life. And this is my work life. I keep work at work and home at home, that's just never going to be someone like that. And so, yeah, I don't know how to, I think that these figures who are larger than life, like, Caesar, MacArthur, throughout history, MacArthur, Napoleon, like, in some sense, you might read about them and think, oh, they just want a hug. But in another sense, like, they kind of don't want. That's the opposite of what they want. They don't want to be comforted. Andrew Tate doesn't just want a warm blanket and a glass of milk and some cookies, And it's like, well, he's going to get what he gets. But what is there to say, Because that's kind of the lot he's chosen.
There is something there about like the tail wagging the dog or something. Yeah, there is a weird way, if you live by the Kanye, you die by the Kanye, I guess. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what we're talking about.
Yep. Burning the candles on both ends, right? And that can be also with religious fervor. You know what I mean? Like, it's a candle that burns bright. And, I tend to those extremes. That's one of the things I've had to learn is to how to not do that because it burns the whole house down, right? And so for me, trying to find a way to live more in that center place, and yes, it's absolutely more difficult. Like I can go home to the wife with the white picket fence because I've got a boring day job, and that's really the life. That's the life I should be living, Alan. Right? So that's okay for me, but the people who are able to find themselves in strata superstardom, and there are a few who are able to have found some sort of center to themselves that seem to have been able to pull that off. But that's certainly not Kanye, and it never has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a conversation to be had about being okay with the extremes, being okay with like being the mundane and being okay with the like the harsher or just the opposites or different things. Like, there is a point.
When you're okay with the extremes, are they still the extremes once you become okay with them?
Well, I think it's not that you personally like or dislike them. It's about creating space for them to exist. It's being like a resiliency or a like, an expectation. But I don't think that necessarily. I think it might somewhat like reduce them, but it's an openness to like absurdity. It's like, it's not saying like, oh, these are the opinions I'm okay with. It's really saying like, I know that things will come up that I don't have a way of coping with, and I need to be okay with being unokay, or like be with the stranger, with the uncertainty, with the like harsh, and like I think there's a very masculine feminine thing where like you see it in marriage of like oftentimes there are huge gaps of what men and women think of as normal in living together in life, and you sort of like need to create spaces for both of those things to exist.
Like, I guess the question the way I'm asking the question is, there are two contexts to the song, the Kanye song, and we're all sorts of saying that the center of the song is the pain of not being able to see his family, and the extreme is the HH around it. Now, the meme of it is that what sticks in your brain is the N word HH. It's just once you listen to the song once, it just repeats in your brain for a while, and that's the one that's being quote unquote okay. The actual pain becomes the extreme. So if we're saying let's be okay with the extreme, then yes, that means let's be okay with having a conversation be around the HH and what is pointing at rather than the meat of the matter. Because what's made the song popular isn't that he can't see his kids. he's been saying that for a while. What's made it popular is the HH attached to it, and that's what's being made okay. So if and the point, the way the extreme gets integrated into the center, the Peugeot language, is by pointing to it as an example of what not to do. And if there isn't an outrage over Kanye saying what it's saying, then that would be a signal that okay, this is now the norm. Does that make sense?
I have a question. I've got to get ready. I'm sorry, guys. I got to get ready to leave. I'm going to do something with my wife here this afternoon. But I have a question. Ty, are you listening to the song? Do you listen to the song?
I didn't. I listened to it once the group chat was made to discuss it, and I never went back to it because instantly I was like, oh, this is a version. This is not the type of Kanye that I'd go back to listen to. This is the song on an album that I would skip.
Here we go. Okay. Hey, McMo, I've got to go. McMo Streams, the only channel on TSC where we can have. I knew we could have this conversation because I think it's a good conversation, and I think you've kept it right in the sweet spot of where it should be in nuance.
Careful. Don't praise me. It'll get you booted and banned if you keep it
Oh, I
up.
forgot. I thought it was in Luke chat. Luke
Yeah.
likes the public affirmations. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I
McMo.
do too, but I know how to deal with my temptations. Apparently, Luke just likes, tempting himself. I don't know. But no,
Thanks for
thank
the
you
hit
very
up.
much, Lance. I knew you would enjoy being a part of this, so I'm glad. And thanks for DMing me about it too, because yeah, I think that my general question to start, and feel free to leave whenever you want, Lance, but my general question in regards to all of this stuff is kind of like what Sherry was pointing to earlier, which is like surrounding attention. And so there's the question of quantity of attention you give something, and then there's the quality of attention you could give something, right? And so I think with Kanye, the problem is almost always that he's getting a high quantity of attention, and he kind of prefers that because the quality attention kind of starts to see some of his flaws and doesn't see the obvious flaws, right? Because one of the tactics of a sneaky bastard is to show you their more obvious flaws or flaws that they're okay with to kind of distract you from the more insidious parts of who they are and how they operate. So that kind of like, I don't know. I've never, to be honest, I don't know if this speaks well of me, but like I never really trusted his Christian conversion, and it made me feel more fear than anything else. Matt C finally here gets the special
Finally,
invite he's not on stream yet. He's just in the hive mind. He's ducking. He's ducking the smoke, even though he had some great points that I probably failed to reiterate. Well, anyway, yeah, there's something about it. I don't know. I think I might have remembered it and then forgotten it again, but it had to do with some of the stuff Alan was talking about in terms of Kanye not being able to like turn it off and just like go home and be with his kids and that be like a regular thing or something.
uh,
Yeah, there's a sense in which like I think for a long time Kanye has bought into the kayfabe. And so I guess my
yes.
question is something like, do we have to buy into our own kayfabes in order to be successful? Which is kind of the like Trump Kanye model, right? It's like no need to apologize. That doesn't help anything, and it just makes people think you're weak. And just plow on, keep doing what you're doing to the best of your ability. Very ubermenschy, you know. Or is there a sense in which if Kanye would have been satisfied with a family, uh, would he even feel the need to kind of like do this kind of thing? And oh, I remember what I was going to say having to do with that is I get the sense from Kanye that he's the type of person that really doesn't struggle with many things on in life. And when he does struggle with something, it's like, oh, well, I'm just not meant to do that thing. And that's not a problem until it's like it's not enough to have a family, right? Like any piece of like crap schmuck can have a family. But to like have a good family and to love your family well, that's actually something that like takes work regardless of your kind. Like nobody's born being a family man. You know, like
Yep.
that's a decision you make like constantly and at multiple times through your life. So what do you guys think about that? Phoebus is bringing up Gray Fabe. Also, did you get in an argument with Jan while I was washing dishes, Taya?
Yeah, I brought up something that I didn't want to be brought up, but then it reacted in a way that brought more attention to it than I ever did, which I found interesting. But anyway, I'm not
Oh,
gonna
the old
gonna speak more
Streisand
about it.
effect. Well, certainly I don't advise anybody to go back and find what that was all about.
Yeah,
Not worth it at this point.
it was proven to be false, and I did not mean to insinuate that it wasn't anything other than proven to be false. Anyway, I think one, I agree with you. To me, Kanye bought into kayfabe, into his own kayfabe post Jesus. My favorite Kanye song is "Power" from um what was that? My Beautiful Dark Fantasy, and in there it spoke about how it spoke about both the ego and the other side, where it feels like nuts. Why he has to use the mask of the ego to cover up the little child inside, but by Jesus, it was proclaiming to be God. And I think, like I said, it went to Sway and equivocated his dealings with Nike as to slavery and trying to get out of thing. Now, metaphorically speaking, I don't think it was wrong to do that, but he was speaking as if it was matter of fact, and anyone that contradicted them at that point, um, he was he spoke to them rudely, and it post that he took a back seat. He had conversations with people around him, and it was like, okay, no, I was wrong. Came back with TPAB, and I was like, okay, maybe, but even on TPAB, that's when we got the famous video. So to me, post Jesus is brought into the kayfabe, and it really played into. That's when he started going to the Met Gala, and talking about being a billionaire, all of the things. Uh, so but I don't think. I think at the Jesus stuff, I do think the conversion, or maybe that's just wishful thinking. Neither of us know. We're just playing guessing game there. But my wishful thinking is, I think it was real, because there was a turning down of kayfabe, a lot of that, in a way where it was doing service, and by Dunda, I actually believed it, because he was still doing Kanye stuff in terms of the artistry, but a lot of the content of that, there was at no point was it actually doing self gratification. It was all Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. But which makes this turn to me a lot more interesting. Like I keep saying, it's that the road of this new revival. If Kanye was one of the first to go through it, won't wait at the other side of it. Matt C, finally, welcome. You kicked this off as far as I'm concerned. I wasn't paying attention to Kanye until you DM'd.
Oh no, you didn't even see HH, huh?
No.
Oh my gosh.
I saw the conversation around it, but I hadn't listened to it until
Yeah.
you messaged.
Did you guys already talk about what Jonathan Pajot had to say on it? Did y'all catch that yesterday?
Yes, we started out with that, but
Oh,
would love your takes just in general or specifically about Peugeot's take.
Yeah, I think I was really proud of Jonathan for jumping on the topic again when he hasn't always jumped on the topic of Ye. He kind of cut him loose and let him go for a while. And we've been chatting about how in different ways I think Ye is much more clearly to be understood right now in this moment, even though he's at his worst. Obviously, in a lot of ways, doesn't have to be said, but he's telling you himself. He doesn't have to be interpreted as far to make sense of. You could just read his lyrics, and particularly HH, and they pair well together. HH pairs well with Cousins. They're both absolute screams for help about about his family, about how he's an active participant in his own problems, as well as even as he knows, like everyone can say they're a victim of the situation. he perpetuates it, and he knows that, and he's trying to grasp the words of power for any kind of semblance of feeling like he has agency, when the central core thing that made him feel like a human was his family. So he's been stripped of something that makes him feel human. Even though I like what Taya was saying. I don't know if he had been a big happy family and everything had stayed together over the last several years, he probably wouldn't have been happy with that. That's like one of the dark truths about him and probably a lot of guys is, they're going to spend their whole lives pining over completing their family, and if they did have the complete family, they'd be crying about something else. We're never satisfied. But he sees his family, his complete family, as what made him whole, and now he can't be whole. So now he doesn't have agency, and now he's going to be the villain to I don't know, project that issue
Yeah, I wonder if
outward.
this is a place where I see things slightly. Just the last little bit you said, I do
Hmm.
think. I don't know if I disagree or if I agree. I'll just say kind of my perspective on it because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the topic of the villain is really important here
Hmm.
because sure, Kanye is the fool, quote unquote. But what do we make of the fool taking on the moniker saying, no, I'm not the fool anymore. I'm the villain.
Yeah,
Um, and that kind of, which this is common in art, but also in rap music. Like, there's a million songs about like, I'm the devil or like, I'm the
Monster
baddest, I'm a
comes
monster.
to
Like,
mind.
even from Kanye, like, what was always unique about Kanye was that he didn't claim to be the devil. He claimed to be God. Similar,
Yeah.
similar thing with Kendrick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there is a question of like, um, what is that doing for Kanye, like claiming to be the villain? And I do think that it has to do with like his need to kind of expose himself for some reason. Like he feels that compulsion to be overly vulnerable or overly. But
yep,
yeah, because that was the other thing that I thought that you hit really well in our um, DMs, Matt, was like some something you could put it into better words, but something about the like even the like masculine cry for help. Like he has to do it in like this way in which he like yeah, there's something about he makes you. What was interesting, like yeah, okay, sorry, I'm getting my
yeah.
footing here, fellas.
Guys in pain,
Guys
which
in
is
pain, yeah,
yeah,
and then there's these two modes of addressing it, and one is this like I'm going to expose you to like what I feel the most shame about, so that that shame no longer has power. Like it's not a secret shame anymore.
yep,
I don't have to like hide it. But then the other one is like I'm going to turn myself into something that you don't want to be around. And that kind of what I see in that is that kind of like exhibitionist slash like forced voyeurism that like Kanye has basically been doing on a subconscious level, I think, for his entire career. But it's now come to this like very obvious, like this has got to be the most obvious time where Kanye has kind of said something that he said it because he wants to say something that people shouldn't say.
yep, and get you to say it because he's pulling you in and pushing you away, and he likes that. Both of those are both motions of trying to have agency over the situation through his audience. I think. Yeah, you said it really well. That's really cool. He pulls you in and he shoves you.
Yeah, there's language for that in like attachment theory and stuff like that. Like I think that it's a common enough experience, but I think what it to
Yeah,
me it
but
goes. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask Matt which part of the song is doing the pulling in, and which one's doing the drawing away. Because I would say it's the HH part that's doing the pulling in.
Oh wow.
Because
Okay.
that's the
I was
that's the
thinking the
one.
opposite. That's neat.
Yeah, and I think I think you're right that that's the way it should be, but in its presentation, now I've not listened to Cousins, that and I think that might be affecting my judgment. Um, McMo, have you listened to Cousins?
No, I couldn't do it.
I
I'm not
I
a.
couldn't I
Yeah, I heard what it was about, and I was like, okay,
I
I know what it's
couldn't
about now.
yeah, but I think also I I do believe that it's true because I don't think Kanye lies to get attention, or it will exaggerate and go point at things, but I don't think it will lie. Like Lance and I was talking about, is authentic. But and also thinking back to your other songs where he's spoken about his cousins extorting him for money and blackmailing him for money. So I
He
can imagine
definitely got
this.
bleach on his T-shirt. He definitely got bleach on his T-shirt.
I can imagine this being one of the last thing, to your point, Matt, of like I'm going to expose myself so that no one else has something over me, and I can feel uh
Yep.
free to go as far into the fringe as I so wish. However, I think it's important to not skip over the fact that Kanye's family didn't fall apart solely because of things outside of Kanye. Kanye played, I'm sure, a lot of roles in the way in which family came to point. To make most point, it's not an easy thing. It's not. It's Kanye's very. I'm called to be a great musician, called to be a great artist, called to be a great designer, and if the father thing is meant to break you, and if you walk away from what feels uncomfortable, that part of the story has to be told. And I'm not buying the everyone's against me, even in me not being able to see my kids. Why are you? Why? How did we get to this point?
Yeah, well said.
Well, and it's also playing with the like tropes again. Him being behind the curve instead of ahead of the curve. In the sense, like I remember about whenever Infinity War from the Avengers came out, like there was this big meme explosion of Thanos was right, and that like there was this leftist reading of the movie in which like Thanos had perfectly good motivations for doing what he did. Now, of course, this is ultimately a midwit take, and that the Avenger talk got Matt to leave. I should have known to bring up the Marvel comics to the comic book guy, and it's just a bridge too far. Um, but there was this meme of like um, Thanos was right, you know, and it makes sense to me that Kanye is playing with this kind of victim villain dichotomy, and in a day and age in which I think the vibe shift is actually going towards more of a we want a genuine we want a genuine hero, right? Like that's there's all this excitement around the new Superman movie because it might actually be just kind of like a genuine, wholesome, like quote unquote American Superman again. This conservative and traditional optimism, this neo traditional optimism that we see all over is is opining for their next taste of propaganda on their side of things. Uh, and so yeah, Kanye is it's very peculiar to me in some way. Like I think if I would have predicted one or the other of these songs, but not probably both.
Yeah, but I think Big Mo, like any hero, has to be according to a certain morality, and I think that what Ye's doing is rejecting a morality where he would like a mainstream heroism because he's looking at like you know I'm getting rejected, I can't see my family, I'm suffering because and now I'm not going to play by the rules anymore. I'm going to become the villain when you know so the idea like you can't just say like, oh, I'll just be a hero. It's like a hero in what context, I think that's one of the gifts of postmodernism is like it makes us challenge a lot of the stories, and you can't just say I'm the hero. It's just like without
It
saying
could
from what
also be the
perspective.
nitrous. Grim makes a good point.
Very much could be, but I do think there is a Kanye is on his villain arc, and you're right, McMo. That's not a Kanye move. Is more always uh be on the side of quote unquote good, even trying to be God, and as Jesus
I don't
showed.
I don't I don't know about that. Like I think that his Yeezus turn was a blasphemous turn, right? It was, and so he's done this oscillation too, right? Like
Yeah, but is Jesus' turn? I took is I am a god to be in the way that all of the 36 chambers is full with the Wu-Tang Clan calling each other God, God, God. That sort of black consciousness, which Kanye is a fruit of, is what I took it as, and him taking that to the nth degree. So I didn't see it as quote unquote blasphemy in the way, or maybe I was just too much of a Kanye fan at that point. But I saw it more as this another Kanye being misunderstood again, sort of a thing. But in the execution, it was being blasphemous.
Yeah, at the time I thought that it was both. I thought that it was very much in the vein of quote unquote piss Christ, the work of art, which
Yeah.
some Christians think is just like the most offensive thing ever, and then even some Catholics are like, there might be something to that. Oh yeah, now the chat's going crazy, but nobody wants to join.
Yes.
Parlato says as long as there's no cameras. Notoriously handsome fella. Surprising that he doesn't want to go camera. Oh, his self conception is that he is bumming it, as the kids say.
Oh, this is the Saturday, Sunday kickout.
Did I call it the Sunday kickout?
That's what you did, mate.
Oh my goodness. Well, the problem is a little bit of an explainer, and Grimm's always going to be the one to catch my wrong titles. So I didn't even catch this at the beginning of the stream, the Sunday part. I thought I did Saturday kickout, but because I was multitasking on the Discord and also trying to do some chores, and the other thing is that I took yesterday off from work to clean up around the house. So I felt like yesterday was kind of a weekend day as well. So yeah, I'm all off. My clock, my calendar, huge.
Yo, what?
My clock and my calendar.
Yeah,
Oh
that
goodness.
lot was important.
Parlato, give us a voice check real quick. Well, I'm going to remove you from stage. And then if you can hear me, Parlato, and you get your stuff figured out, send us a message on the private chat to prove it's you. Let's see. What would be a good question for Parlato?
No, let's see what it comes up with. Don't
Yeah.
judge.
Well,
Don't give him a clue.
yeah, prove that it's you, Parlato, in the private comments.
And if you've got Thunderbolt in your word, you would type in NHH.
I would not prove anything.
Yeah, where were we on the yay?
That's a good question.
Oh, by the way, I was gonna ask the beat you're working on. If it doesn't have a soul sample in it, that would be a missed opportunity.
It's true. Well, to be honest, I haven't really been working on the beat very much. I've just been kind of washing dishes.
That's a plus.
Yeah. It's multitasking. I felt like this should be more of a Luke style stream where I just let people come on and talk, but um, you know, it is what it is at this point, and this would be a perfect time for us to shut it down. And
Yeah.
Parlato left, so that was probably he's just probably a sign. We should probably just end it. No beat at the end. I'll play some branding, and if somebody wants to jump in, I'll keep it going a little longer, but this might be a good time to wind it down. Keep the people wanting more. Bring them back tomorrow for a chill Sunday stream. All right, I'm going to give this new Parlato another chance. Parlato, are you there? Man, that is
Wait,
sketchy.
did you remove him or did he leave?
He left. That was definitely not Parlato. It was probably one of
Yes.
those atheists trying to crash our stream again.
Well, shut it down. That's a sign.
Yeah, well, we've done a little bit of defense against the dark arts here, but keep an eye out for Grim and Af behind the scenes. Okay, one more time for Parlato. Parlato, can we hear you now? Parlato, you're on screen. LOL. Yeah, you're proven to be. Oh, and he lost.
Yeah, it's Matthew. It's Matthew.
It's definitely him. He said the magic word behind stage. It's definitely him. But we do have Ron to keep us going. Ron,
Copperman, dude.
welcome, sir.
Dudes. So are you I had a buddy who was bipolar at church, and he went to the Wailing Wall in Israel, and he's part Cherokee, and he was wearing a Cherokee headdress at the Wailing Wall, like kind of declaring he was a prophet. And it wasn't too long after that. Well, actually, it was a little while after that. They finally got him on the right meds. And he goes, he told me, he goes, I was ashamed to tell people I was bipolar. And I was ashamed to be on the drugs because I thought it wasn't faith. And I looked at him, I'm like, dude, it is nothing like that. You know, faith is cool, but so are meds. So I wonder if Kanye just needs the right, if he's like my buddy, if he can get the right help, the people, once they come out of it, they're actually really cool. And if Kanye's who you say he is and he's got issues, I feel sorry for him. And Lord, in the name of Jesus, for Kanye, any kind of spirits that are hindering him, I don't cast you out, but I bind them in Jesus' name, and I stop them, and I loosen peace and healing and restoration in his life. And Lord, that by your stripes he's healed. So peace for Kanye and healing in Jesus' name. And by the way, Yon Dog owes $1 to the cuss jar. He was potty mouth trolling. It was good, but
Well, McMo, co-filing, please.
yeah, that's it.
Wait,
if you
amen.
cuss him like,
Sorry. First of all, amen. First of all, amen, peace, and healing for Kanye. I think that.
Listen, I'm gonna go smoke a joint now. Don't tell my mom.
No, you're not.
I know. I had some chocolate chip cookies. I'll repent. But I'm
Matthew, are you able to speak? Oh gosh.
Parlato, is it you? Have you figured it out yet? We lost Ron. Now it's just secret Parlato. Guys,
Matthew not able to defend the woke right. I'm sure he's seething.
Yeah. No one here to give a full-throated defense of the woke right. Unfortunate.
Well, let's McMo, what do you think of the post-war consensus? Let's get to it.
Oh, that is a tricky one.
Because PVK, let me just lay there. I thought it was interesting. PVK dropped his trigger warning video where I think he expertly navigated the minefield that is the conversation of the post-war consensus. And I think a day or two later was when Peugeot dropped his video on Kanye, giving his version of the post-war consensus conversation. So it's clearly something, and Nate has been on a crusade of sorts trying to engage people in this type of conversation. And I think it would be cowardly for us to do an whole stream about it without engaging it directly.
Can you hear me, Mo?
Yep, I can hear you.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, I'm outside working on my chicken coop, and I didn't want you to end the stream but actually I just realized every time I come on, you end the stream.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, frick.
Well, and Parlato keeps coming in and out. It's like
Sorry, Matthew's been trying, and it's funny now. I don't want him to be able to ever be able to get in because it's funnier the longer it's gonna go on for.
no, I want him to come in. He actually had things to say. I wanted to hear what he had to say.
And the fact that he keeps
on,
trying
Matthew.
makes it funnier.
I'm gonna.
Oh,
Can I shut my
gosh.
camera?
Yeah.
Can I shut my camera off, McMo? Because I'm gonna go. Okay, and I'm listening. And if you want to end the stream,
All right.
fine.
We know
Go
it's
ahead.
you. We know it's you. Yeah, Kanye.
I got my earbuds
Matthew,
in,
please
so
keep trying.
tell me.
Matthew, please keep trying. There he is.
Tell me if for some reason I'm being too loud and I can mute myself, but I'll leave my earbuds in.
So far, so good.
Okay. Okay, so is there
What
any
is
other
going on?
topics?
Wait, we've got live, Matthew.
We got him.
Matthew, keep going. Keep trying.
Can
We're nearly
y'all hear me?
Yes.
Finally.
We need Brandon to celebrate.
All right, a quick one.
I feel like I'm lost in a drift.
We can summon McMo.
I want to talk about which.
What is it? It's all you have to do is say Kierkegaard.
Kierkegaard. We'll see if he stops in the chat later.
Did I lose my connection?
I'm here.
Yes, you are.
I just boomered out for 7 straight minutes, dude.
Usually it's Ron that struggles with trying to
Oh
figure.
my gosh. That was so funny.
What have you got to say?
I don't have much. It just makes it even funnier. I don't have much at all. I just want to come hang out with the boys, pretty much. Hang out with and Miss Sherry and the ladies in the comments. Yeah, I just think my opinion is kind of in a technical way, right? The implicit pattern detection stuff, right? And so I thought Phlebas put a really interesting comment when he said, in a way, he's exemplifying this World War II consensus, right? This feeling of towards Nazism and Hitler, one may say, and as goes evil. But then the point is that I thought was fascinating by that is like, yeah, Phlebas, but look what's going on around this. It's this vanguard artist who I think is in a freaking cry for help is wielding this tension around this consensus or inflection point or wherever you want to frame it. I'll concede whatever framing. But there's some chaos around this.
He's exploding the minefield. It's not ordinary intention. But yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Anyways, and I just think there's something about the youth here that I obviously am not young and I'm not even in the hip. I don't listen to any hip hop anymore. I used to. But so I think there's probably something that the connection for me when I poked Mo the other day, I poked Mo privately about gay, was I had an experience with a young man he was describing how he and his friends engaged with like accusations of like being a fascist or being called a sexist or being called a racist. And it was just, it stuck with me for weeks, that conversation. And I think there's something that Kanye is stumbling into or, blindly, gesturing around at, but I think it also has to do with I think it has to do with some weird aspect of taboos in the moral order, right? Like, and that ties into the World War II consensus. Anyways, yeah, I know that's not a lot. That's nothing concrete.
No, I think that was good. Because I think there is a sense in which the youth, Kanye has always somehow managed to, that's how it used to keep ahead of the curve. But the youth have never left Kanye. Whenever he's been cancelled, the youth were always there. And there is a sense in which you're right, the Gen Alpha and the Zoomers' reaction to the racism accusation doesn't hit the same. They'll just be like, yeah, okay, we're not playing that game. So it's lost power, hence why the more taboo language is now on the table for them. And Kanye playing into the meme of it, I think I can say being appealing to, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah,
what the
yes,
dynamics
the
that
appealing.
Parlato.
But I also could real quick. I also want to just steel man. Just like I think there's an innocence too of just. I think of like a genuine. Well, actually, let's put these things back on the table. We may arrive at like, hey, no, actually, we did kind of arrive at similar conclusions or similar standpoints. But the fact is
No, no, no,
whatever
no,
justification has
no.
got us here, I think we want to question. Go ahead.
So
It's that's like say, wait, let's destroy this fence, and maybe after destroying it, we'll figure out why it was there, and we can put it back where it was. It's I'm not buying this naivety against, or we're just questioning. It's with JQs come JAs. There are answers that are presupposed that power the question, and Kanye's just going straight to the answers.
Okay, well,
He's,
all right, fair. But all right. I was pointing towards the youth, more towards the bluegrass youthful sentiment,
yeah.
right?
So let
Go
me
ahead.
help
Go
you
ahead.
out here, Parlato. One comment I saw probably on X or somewhere was that 15, 20 years ago in the 90s, early 2000s, if you had seen that some famous rapper made a song called Hail Satan, maybe you bat an eye, right? Like maybe it raises an eyebrow and you're like, yeah, those wacky kids, pretending to be Satanists or whatever and emoing out on the imagery or whatever. And you I think that there used to be a kind of eye roll when liberalism was in power. There was just kind of an eye roll, and it's like so much so that like the JLA will defend Nazi marches, kind of a thing. But now I think we do see like what makes the song dynamite in this particular time and place is that you have the kind of, and these are both primarily youth movements of the anti-Israel left and the Nick Fuentes right, the dissident right, of which many have a certain peculiar paranoia about the people of Israel, shall we say. Um, and so Kanye somehow is able to like speak to both of those by reifying like what you were talking about with Phlebas, and there's a reason why the Nazi party had a arm of its power called the Nazi Youth. That they were. This has always been a message that was kind of provocative to young impressionable minds, shall we say? But this is also why I think you see some of the
Well,
not backlash, but like people like Nate kind of sticking up and saying like, "Hey, we know where this goes as a culture. Like, we got to. This is not like." But yeah, so it's interesting to me that, and I think Tayo made this point that like because you've got those two responses, you've got like to me that seems like we are at this tipping point of like the culture changing where people really it seems like they either want to say that Kanye is like this jokester who's like doing the thing that we all know is bad, but then you've got I think a sizable population that's like no, it's not that bad, like it's not that bad of a thing that's going on. So well, and we lost Parlato again, but Sherry, what were you going to say? Sorry to interrupt.
I don't know. I mean, I don't listen to Kanye. I didn't listen to the song. I'm slowly just figuring out what it's about. And I don't know if he's anything like me. He's tired of the overusage of the word. It's lost its meaning, and I think he's probably given it back. And at the same time, identifying a certain number of people who are serious about its real meaning.
Wait, which
And it's interesting
word is it?
because,
Which word, Sherry? Woke?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
No,
well, I
which
mean,
word, Sherry? I want.
which
Is it
word?
the
Okay, well,
NHA?
so I don't know what that is, but I'm assuming HH is Heil Hitler. Would
Yes,
that be
ma'am.
right?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
All
it.
right,
and
thank you very
it's
much.
Those
just
are the words.
And so, and I think that's a nod toward the overusage of the word Nazi. Every freaking person on the right is a Nazi or has been in the recent past, and that that overusage has actually knocked out the power of what that ideology really represents, right?
I think you're
And
over it,
this is
Sherry.
what happened. Huh?
Keep going. I think you're over the target. Keep going. I just wanted to encourage.
Oh, okay. I thought I was making a mistake. You never know when you're a boomer, you know, when you stepped in a pile of shit or not. But anyway, I think at the same time, you can also, and I don't know if this is his intention, but it's probably somewhere in there, squeaked in there, to identify the real ones, right? The actual ones, which are very few and far between in reality. The word has lost, and there have been warnings about losing the power of this word. It's lost its meaning to people, and there's more danger in that than there is in it holding any kind of real meaning. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, there's something deeply at work with how words change and how the use of the words change over time that's really connected
Yep.
with the type of like environment necessary that we could even be questioning a thing called the quote unquote post world war consensus, right? Like there kind of has to be a lot of language drift and a lot of like new understandings of things for that to even be possible.
Yeah. I mean, it would be like meeting someone from King Arthur's court who's warning you about dragons, right? And you're like, well, I've never seen a dragon, so they probably aren't real. And but to that person, they are. Like, I don't know. I'm probably not making any sense, but this post World War II thing, I think that's important. I didn't watch it, but I've heard Jonathan talk about we're living in the kind of the remnants of this World War II mythology, you know, of America saving the world, of there being only one kind of enemy, and
Yeah,
this is the game of it.
so that was where we started because we were watching the video as a jumping off point of that Peugeot video where he was talking about the post-war consensus. Because at the beginning he says, "Watch the fool," and the fool he chose to watch was Kanye, and so that was
Right.
kind of the jumping off point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
haven't watched
think
any of that.
Sherry, to your point about the overuse of the playing the Nazi racist god, people are sick of it. I think you're exactly right, and particularly the younger generation, or to Matthew's point earlier, that's where they're at, and that to
Yeah.
me is what makes this the Kanye song not new. If this came out in what 2015, um with all of this, that's when there was cancel culture was a real thing, but we've gone through that, and on the other side of it uh are this the the fringe, the and the JQ and the JA isn't new. That's just what came with coming on
Yeah.
the other side of cancel culture, and the
Hold
youth,
on, Tayo. Hold on,
they've been
Tayo.
playing
Beep
with
beep
that
boop boop.
language.
Breaking news. Despite Sherry's worries, there will always be a bigger boomer on stream, and it is Parlato who confused the private chat with the public comments and was talking to Phoebus in my private chat. And even my dog thinks it's funny. But please, Parlato, I just want to let you know, man, you got to
Oh
click the
God,
different tab for the
Matthew,
hive mind.
you're on the run today, mate. What's going on with
I love you guys so much. Oh my god.
Well,
4 point
Tayo,
flavors?
I just wanted to say one thing about what you said there, because I was wondering why did I use that? Why did I use the example of the, the guy from medieval times and the dragon? And I just realized why I did is because to the youth of today, the most recent youth, they have no idea what a Nazi is. Like, there's no memory for them. There's only the story, the myth. It's like a dragon, right? It's just a thing to be afraid of. It's almost like
Yeah.
the monster that evolves into a dragon. You know, this that Peterson talked about, the snake, the eagle, and what else was it? You know, the apes were afraid of, right? They had calls for that. Do you guys remember that? Part of the repertoire of Jordan Peterson. Anyway, I'll stop talking. I'm
It was
shoveling it. I can't think.
it was like the danger. It was like the threat response. Like yeah, like there was the falling
Right.
off place, and then there was the like monster that's going to eat me. The like lion, snake, tiger, bear thing.
There you go. There it is. Lion, snake, eagle. That's what it was. And that morphs into a dragon, right? It has wings and it has talons and it's like a snake. But anyways, that's kind of what the Nazi is to the youth of today. They don't know, and then they've heard it described of people who are nothing like it. So I don't know. I think Kanye is trying to. He's sick of the overusage of the words, and I can relate to that because I get tired of people using words that no longer hold their actual meaning. Time to revivify them, and that's how he's doing it. That's what I think.
What do you guys think about what Jonathan said about the spinny wheel? That's kind of how he got at it. The idea that can't. Oh, I think you'll like it, Gary.
What's it about? What's the spinning wheel?
The swastika.
Wheels? Oh, that.
Yeah, the way he was getting at that visual symbol, Jonathan was of even though I don't think it's in HH, but he was saying that as an image, that as a visual image can't stay satanic forever. In all contexts, you can't bleach it out of Native American context or out of ancient India. You know,
and
you can't do it, or you can for a couple generations, but not forever. So, and
let me say this too.
Yeah,
Matt,
sure.
let me just say this really quick. Paganism is on the rise, and they're reviving a lot of these. I think that's why Nate's on his little kick about being anti-pagan because they appear extreme right, because they're reviving the real meaning of these symbols. They're trying to free them of their propaganda. So yeah, that is interesting actually, and I don't think they're Nazis.
Well, and
they are pagan.
That's
you know
not
what?
that doesn't sound like good. Yeah, go on, McMahon.
Yeah, that makes me, this is one of the many reasons why I've just can't escape this whole Christian absurdism thing, because there's a way in which like the idea of being a quote unquote traditional Christian is just weird, because weren't we all saved?
That's okay. Help me up.
Oh, need a mute there, Matt.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. But thanks for wanting to clean up. That's a good on you. But yeah, I got totally thrown off by that. But yeah, there's something about that's absurd about a Christian being like, what traditional equals good, because also in every Christian's life, supposedly, there is this moment of being brought from darkness into light, right? Like in some ways, like the going back of looking to paganism is a sign that even the culture is becoming. It's not that like the re-enchantment is like the re-enchantment chart is perfectly aligned with the like re-Christianization chart. If I can put it, if that makes sense, yeah.
Oh, yeah, but you can't revive symbolism and have it happen only on a Christian level.
Wait, say that again.
That's powerful.
You can't revive symbolism and only have that happen on a Christian level. That's going to be everywhere.
Ooh, I think Sherry. I think there's something to that. I think there's something to that. But I think there's also a way, if you get it right, that it still all harmonizes. the tune of
Well, there's
Christianity.
Christ and Antichrist.
Yes, in universalism, maybe.
Well, this is reminding me of
No, not in.
where was it? Was it on the PVK live stream where the guy was talking about when he was a missionary, he had to, or it might have been a rando, but it was Jess talking about when
Yeah,
he was a
Jess.
missionary, them trying to figure out the like cultural translation. And it's like, how do you share the gospel without sharing Westernism or Western thought, you know? And it's very, very difficult, but there are these universal symbols, right? And this is kind of this is Peugeot's whole gig. Is that the translation has to be possible, at least in the sense that like what is impossible for man is possible for God, right? But
Okay, but
Phoebus has a good.
Symbols have context.
let's
Symbols
say
have
this,
context.
like the
That's neat.
let's talk about the swastika on YouTube. Anyway, let's say that was taken and bastardized by a certain group of people, right, who committed horrific crimes, but that's not what that symbol represents. Never has. So, is this an effort by both Christians to revive symbolism, pagans to also revive symbolism, to bring some kind of truth to the world?
But I think isn't it fair to say that a lot of the people that are playing with the spinny wheel are playing with what Peugeot calls the anti-story, right? They're really, which is what
I didn't. Yeah, I don't know.
like they're really. I mean, this is what Kanye's HH is about: is saying, if you're going to force me into this villain box, I'm going to own it and throw it back at you. So I would adopt your story of me.
Yeah, and their story has no meaning. That's my point. It doesn't mean anything to them.
No,
They're
it's not just that it doesn't mean anything. The story is not true, and it's been a lie that's oppressive, and there's a reaction against the lie.
But that reaction, there's a reactive reaction, and then there's a transformative one. The reactive one is just to adopt the anti-story, and just to identify with the villain role, which Peugeot warns against.
Can we get more concrete? Like, so is
just identifying as a Nazi, just saying,
okay, thank you.
Me. Okay. Yeah. You're still adopting, it's still the same paradigm. You're still playing in the sandbox defined by the story.
Yeah,
you know,
you're not post the liberal. What was the title?
Not at all.
Yeah, you're still reflecting back onto it, which is why I think that's
Is there a way to say, Tayo, that it was a lie, but then we also still want to, we can still see the issues there, or even maybe perhaps the motive, even if we're blessed enough to see the motivations behind their lie?
I interpret your question to be: is there a way of talking about reformation instead of deconstruction? And I think that's what
I'm kind of lost.
No, it was when you said, but they found out, but they I thought you had said that they believed it a lie, right?
Sherry, like that was in response to Sherry saying that the story did matter to them, and I was saying it's just that the story wasn't real, or that matter is that the story wasn't true, and it was a lie.
So identifying with the anti-story doesn't fix that. You're still trapped in the maze.
The story I'm referring to in this being the post World War II consensus.
Yeah.
Hold on, folks. Sherry, Sherry, what were you trying to say? Your mic is very quiet.
But that is
Sherry trying to speak. Oh, sorry, Sherry.
Yeah, I could hear Sherry trying to speak, but her mic is very quiet.
I'm probably
we might be losing you.
Thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. You're cutting in and out.
Can you hear me now?
But see, I think that's the issue, Tayo.
Oh, really?
Is
Sherry's still trying to speak? Hold on, Matthew. I can sort of make out, but
Can you hear
Go on,
me?
Sherry.
Wait a
Give it a
minute.
try.
Let me
Yes,
take my
yes,
earbuds
but
off.
you're still very quiet.
Can you guys hear me?
Somehow she got harder to hear. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Well, I think she might not be able to hear
I don't mind,
us.
guys.
Oh,
I can
wait.
hear you guys, but I
There
wanted
she
to.
is. That's
I
better,
You're
wanted
good
to
Sherry.
now.
Good.
I wanted to do. Am I good?
hmm
I'm not
She's
good.
probably like several seconds behind us, so we just gotta.
I'm gonna jump off and come back on.
Is there a way, Tayo? Tayo, is there a way that we can acknowledge the lie behind the narrative that has been, so tightly associated with the identity of Nazism versus, or can we acknowledge that perhaps there was lies about that and still be able to stand in a place where we can critique that, but from a more, you know,
Let me
rationally
so
sound.
let me try to answer Flipper's question, which I think might help you.
Yes,
But
yes, I'm trying to put the same thing for Felipe says. Yes, go ahead.
the lie that I think is that the bad guy in the World War II stories were the Germans. That's the lie uh that's being reacted against. Is that that was a lie and that's being questioned. It's
The
not an accident
exclusive
that
bad guy. That's the only,
yes.
and everything that doesn't look like that one bad guy is the good guy. Yeah. hmm
Did that clear
So
things up, Matthew?
so it's really we're not just talking about a symbol or a myth. We're talking about a foundation myth.
Yeah, but I think
You know.
yes, but I think it's also a caricature because I think the reaction would be, well, that's not any sophisticated recapitulation of that identity in the historical transpiring or circumstances that transpired from an actual, knowledgeable expert, right. They would counter you. They would counter you by saying, actually, uh, if uh, uh, if looked into with enough sophistication, you actually will see that see the nuance and the detail in the chaos, right, in the clusterfuck. Excuse my language, Mo. I shouldn't have said that.
Banned,
I
banned
if I
forever.
was
No, so the that's the lie. The lie exists in the kind of um in the simplistic. Like, I don't think that y'all are disagreeing. That one of the reasons why Nazi are a bad guy, like were the bad guy and the only bad guys, and that the source of all sin in World War II and the problems of the Holocaust are all because there were these evil white Germans, and they were led by their evil father of lies, Adolf, the artist. That's the lie. And it's a lie both because it doesn't pertain to the truth of the what was, but also it's a lie because it's overly simplistic. And that kind of, even if directionally true, there are good guys and bad guys. That kind of simplistic and I think what's really going on when we talk about like post-war consensus is a battle over like, is this a foundational myth? Because I think for pretty much everybody older than us on stage, yes, it is the foundational myth. So, but I would love to hear more from Matt C about what, like, this being a foundational myth. What does that mean? Like, because
Yeah. I'm worried about that.
But that's the problem. The foundational myth is I don't trust it as far as I could throw it. I don't trust it as far as I could throw it. I don't trust your foundational myth.
Yeah, so it's a noble lie, right? And so if you know it's a lie, the
Absolutely.
noble thing is to not talk about it, right? So what does
Yeah.
it mean that the weekend on the internet question are like we should be accused
I disagree
of
with that. I
blasphemy to
disagree
the
with that.
American myth, right?
There's nothing about my Christianity and my Christian beliefs in my Christian framework that's a noble lie. Not to me. I don't understand that.
Well, I just
Well,
mean that
here.
like the noble lie is you don't bring up the complexities and nuance of World War II because that will just be used as fodder for the racists.
So
Yep.
it's polite speak for ease of communication, understood implicit. Okay, okay, okay. So yeah, I wouldn't frame that as a noble lie, but okay.
Well, it's the
And it,
same. It's the same. It's the same justification for lying as like Plato's noble lie or whatever. It's because you don't want to give people more than they can handle. Like
This is what I
you
think.
know,
This is what I think happened is that faulty founding myth is trying to put evil down with us into a box, and that's that. Even that venture, even the attempt, will be wielded, subverted, co-opted, uh, you know, reverted, converted. It will always be wielded by evil itself.
Can I just point out, and I might be wrong, so you guys can feel free to push back. But to me, this sounds like the same sort of strategy that the deconstructionists use, is trying to exemplify the complexity within the stories of scripture that led to, oh, okay, this it's a lie, and if it's a lie, you, in your quest to try to understand the complexity of a foundation myth, you
this is
end up
good.
throwing it away. You don't just come
You
up
don't
with
replace it.
exactly.
That's good. That's what people are worried about, and I think Pajot had his finger on it, because you can't, if you're going to, you know, PBK brought this up recently. Like, he's got the clip of Pajot saying the only way through, if you're going to replace a foundation myth, there's a lot of people pining for nuclear war, he said, right? We're trying to figure out, do we need a new foundation myth? Do we need World War III? Because that's how we build our myths, is we have a collective, a burning, I guess, and then we rise up like a phoenix into some sort of post-war kumbaya order, I guess, is how modern society is run. And we're frustrated with the current situation, and our solution is to switch the myth. And Pajot says the only way that's healthy is to understand how that revolution, that violence, gets internalized and flipped upside down absurdly in the cross, right? But the thing is that most people aren't going to be, we don't, like, historically, most people aren't going to become Christian to understand, to stop the eternal cycle of these wars and revolutions with our foundation myths. They're not just gonna buy into that. So we're threatening with this story, anti-story thing. We're threatening to deconstruct it without replacing it with something. Maybe we're just replacing it with the anti-story in some situations, which is very dark, is not the solution. Or we're looking like some political analysts seem to be doing, where we're going to replace it with a repetition of the same story, where we're looking for some kind of conflagration in the future that can refound a new post-war consensus again by the same paradigms, with Russia being the next Satan or something. And that's not a solution either. That's just a perpetuation of the same paradigm. It's just doubling down on the story. So the anti-story or the story are not, you can't just do that artificially. You can't just keep hitting the same button and expecting the same result. So the revolutionary turn is Christ, but most people aren't going to pick that. Most people are going to pick the story or the anti-story again. So
there does seem to be a way in which you can almost see the powers and principalities licking their chops with the war on terror and the war on drugs, and then this. But one of the weird things about the internet is that makes it much more difficult, right? It makes it much more difficult. Like, I don't think that they could have done it with COVID, right? Like, they could have if they had any competence as leaders whatsoever, they could have orchestrated a V-Day, and they could have said, okay,
that's a great
it's
point.
over. We did it, folks. And
that was a failed foundation myth retrieval, wasn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we're still in it. Like, what? Is it over? it is, but some vaccines are good, some vaccines are bad. Ivermectin turned out to be okay. Like, will this video get something beneath it? I'm sure it will if they even let it stay up. But Matt Skankenstein has joined. Sir, have you been listening? What's up? What do you think?
Gosh, there's so much going on. But just thinking about the idea of the fact that we're dealing with a founding myth that's crackling, I think one of the things that a myth does is it's a low resolution, larger than life picture of events that, like one of the things it does is it very clearly draws out good guys and bad guys. So one of the things our foundation myth is doing is, as an American who's on the good guy side, it's definitely obscuring whatever sins we may have committed in the time. And if we don't want our sins uncovered, our only option is to double down on the myth. And if the myth is founded through violence, that's doubling down on the violence. So if we're, I guess, trying to find a better way out of this, we figure out some way to begin to take responsibility somehow. Very Jordan Peterson-y.
All right. I mean, so what does that look like?
Starting to be a little bit more aware of atrocities committed by Americans during the war, being a little bit more honest about the horrendousness of Hiroshima and stuff like that. I don't know how far back is our founding myth? How far is our mythology that's obscuring our sins going?
Yeah, this is again. We're back to the you guys have not beat the woke rights accusation in my book. Not you, Matt Skag and Sky, but so within the context of the conversation, I keep hearing the woke right being described, but we all pretend as if there's no such as a woke right. And I'm pointing to the how far back do we have to go on this repenting scale of trying to identify where our mistakes is, and then review the complexity of that atrocity, demand repentance for it, and then you go back again and go back again. And I think if the foundation myth of quote unquote there was the simple myth of there were good guys, there were bad guys. Once you start questioning that, you don't then come to a place where there aren't good guys or bad guys. You just find new good guys and new bad guys. And it seems to me the new bad guy
Yep.
is liberalism, and liberalism is the new fascism from a certain perspective, where that's the thing that went wrong in the post World War II consensus.
Is that the anti-story, do you think? Or is that... Yeah.
Is you saying is liberalism the anti-story?
That liberalism was the real and only villain all along. Because it was liberalism that told us that the Nazis were the only real villain all along.
I don't think liberalism's not the ultimate villain, but it's sort of like a sub boss, because one of the things that liberalism does is it prevents you from dealing with ultimate questions. It's a sort of like a peace pact. We're not going to have states that make judgments on which denomination is correct. We're going to have a sort of like armistice. We're not going to fight about these issues. We're only going to fight about smaller issues. So for as long as we are happy with that level of peace, that doesn't bring those ultimate issues up to the forefront, it is an obstacle we need to get behind somehow, or get beyond somehow.
Yeah, that what I think you're pointing at, Tayo, is so valuable. I think Pajot was pointing at it too. You can't just unmake a foundation myth and then say, I did it, I saved the West. You actually need, like every culture needs a foundation myth. It's going to be replaced. Can you replace it? Can you anticipate that and replace it with something that has the elasticity and the veracity to handle inevitable changes going forward? It's not going to be as brittle. You're going to get something that actually works, or are you just going to break it and then watch something else bubble up? Probably an anti-story in its place, because people only got half unmade. You know what I mean? I feel like the anti-story kids are just like Yay. They're just upset, and they're saying, I need some agency, please. And you told me what agency looks like.
Yeah.
You know, I'm taking that for myself, which is completely understandable and completely destructive.
Well put, Matt. Well put. Where I've been surrounded by Matthews all day. There was Matt C, Matt Skankenstein, McMo, and Matthew Pilato. What a day.
We out here.
Those millennials, man. If you were born in the 80s,
So
of a
many
certain
folks today not
yeah.
passing the troll test of can they see a video title that doesn't make perfect sense and not make a comment about it.
Hmm.
So many people failed. Yeah, it's not a cookout. It's not a kick out either. You know, makes you wonder if the date's even right.
Now you're making us check.
I actually did check out. Did I miss that one?
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I'm kind of torn. I think the conversation has reached a pretty nice quilting point where we could probably take a deep breath and call it a day. But we got lots of people in the hive mind. We got lots of people engaged. I don't want to end the convo if everybody's got if people have things to say.
Yeah, keep it going. I think we're cooking. I'm waiting. I'm hoping Mark D. Parker shows up. I don't know if he'll have anything to say about Kanye, but on the post-war consensus, that's been part
Oh
of his
my
project
god.
since being on TLC.
Yeah, I'd love to hear his thoughts. I feel like he's gonna try and he's gonna cobble together the pieces, try to put it back together. I'd love to see it.
Another, I guess, like fool to throw on the radar of a much smaller stature. Are any of you guys familiar with the guy Gavin McInnes, the founder of Vice?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, he's very similar, like playing the villain that he's been cast as for a long time. I just watched a recent documentary and that's trying to make sense of the big I don't even know how to describe it, but heel turn politically that he's taken over the last 10 years. And it's interesting that you have another already very abrasive shock jock comedian type guy who has gone this, at least adopting a far right prophilicity.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff is at play. Like prophilicity is at play. Um, the thing is, like, there's questions of the fool versus the troll versus the actual villain, right? Like,
Yeah,
whatever you say about Hitler, he was an actual villain. I think, like, not to say that he wasn't a human being or made in the image of God or anything like that, but more to say, and maybe that is just is that the heart of the post-war consensus that like Hitler is the villain, and that's really the only thing we could agree on.
He is the scapegoat ultimately of the post-war consensus. So he's the sacrificial victim that binds us all together. If you want to get Girardian,
Oh my goodness.
he's
yo,
the devil.
yeah.
He's the devil we cast out.
Well, welcome, Rod. Can we get a voice check from you there, Rod, just to make sure it's you?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Ooh,
sir.
yes, we can. And I'm glad
Oh,
I got
wonderful.
headphones in.
Welcome,
Those
Rod. Yeah.
golden tones, my FM voice. This is a fairly esoteric subject for me, but I thought I would tell a story that I think is related about the founding myths and all that. So years ago, I did a cross country drive. I've done that a few times in my life, and this was I was driving from east to west, and so I took the northern route. I think is that 80, the one that goes across, through Chicago. And anyway, I get to the Black Hills of South Dakota, and I always wanted to see Mount Rushmore, so I kind of make the detour, and I end up on this Indian reservation, Native American reservation. I think that's the Sioux. I think Luke would know. And there's a like a gift shop, like one of those tourist information center things, right? And so you go in there and gift shop, buy souvenirs and stuff. And I'm probably about 30, so about that age. And I'm just looking at the bookshelves, and I see this book, and the title of the book was enough to get me to buy it. I just bought it because of the title. And the title was Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And so just on the title alone, I then started just devouring this book for the rest of the trip. And it's basically an incredibly painful retelling of some of the worst of our interactions with the Native Americans and some of the massacres and the battles but it's an incredibly compelling story as well, right? And my experience with that subject up until that time was pretty much limited to elementary school and junior high and high school, knowing a little bit about kind of the basic story of the westward expansion. And to Matt C's point earlier, like I knew who the good guys were. Manifest Destiny, all that, right? And suddenly I'm reading the story, and it's shaking my whole perception of that period of American history. Now, at 30 years old, the effect on me was not that I suddenly began to hate my country or something like that. I still love this country just as much as I did before. But it certainly, as they say, complexified the narrative, right? So that's a personal story of someone encountering a kind of a broadside to a kind of foundational myth, like we deserved to be here, and God wanted us, and Manifest Destiny, and From Sea to Shining Sea, and right. And here's a book retelling some of the really gruesome truth about how that was accomplished. So that's a personal story about one man encountering deconstructing a kind of foundational myth.
I guess that's a good place to ask the question: when is it right to deconstruct foundational myth? Because Matt, you and I were making the point that deconstructing it isn't replacing it, but there are times when it's important, and I think that's what a lot of especially the Gen Alphas and Zoomers are pointing to is no, we're not buying the simple story. There are parts of this that you've sort of written over that needs further investigations, and you didn't look you went under further scrutiny. It doesn't look like you were always the good guy.
Well, the effect it had on me is it made me grow up a little bit. It's something like discovering that your parents aren't perfect, right? There's a point in your life where hopefully you reach a point where you begin to see your parents more accurately, right? As just human beings hopefully doing the best they could. Hopefully they did, or even if they didn't, right? And it's a kind of maturation where you well, you deepen your understanding of yourself and the human condition and your place on the planet and all those things, right? That's all, to me, that's all a really healthy and important process. But when you're ready, right? So it's a, there has to be a kind of an age appropriateness to that kind of thing. And so clearly, when you're trying to indoctrinate children, propagandize people before they're ready necessarily to sift through it in a nuanced way, well, now I want to know what your motives are. I want to know what your agenda is, right? So in the example I gave, I was a full-grown man at that point, and I'd never really given it a lot of thought. And so when I had to think about it more deeply, I felt that was actually a very healthy thing.
That's praise God you went through the other route, which is the maturation, but there is another one, which is resentment, and you can find out your parents weren't the great parents you thought they were, and that leads to you holding resentments towards them, and that doesn't sound like a productive way or mature way of dealing with that deconstruction of the foundation myth.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. I'll this will be shorter, but I'll tell you another related story. So more recently, there was a book called, I think, Empire of the Summer Moon. I think it was. Fantastic book, by the way. And it was about a particular, a true story in the West Texas region during, when the skirmishes between the West Texas settlers and I think it was the Cherokee or the Apache, and there were just some really terrible stories, right? Scalpings and massacres and in both directions. And this one particular family is out there on the the frontier, and the patriarch is away and returns to find everything's gone and burned to the ground and massacres, scalpings. But there were what they would often do is that they would kidnap adolescent girls of a certain age, and then they would make them squaws, right? And so this particular story is about this man hunting for his daughter high and low, and she, they elude him for quite some time. He finally finds her and rescues her and brings her home, and then she keeps trying to escape to go back, and it's an incredibly painful and powerful story about how she basically ended up wanting to remain with the tribe that had killed her entire family and kidnapped her. Well, the story, it's a book well worth reading, and I don't want to spoil it if anybody wants it, because they had a son, and he ended up being the last leader of the resistance movement in the late 19th century. And it's just an unbelievable story. But the reason I mentioned it is because, these are the Comanches, the Apaches. They would be the Taliban of the 19th century, right? They were toward the end, they resorted to really horrific tactics because they were outgunned and outmanned, and so a lot of the tactics they resorted to were quite gruesome. And so in the parlance of the day, they would have been what we would now think of as terrorists, guerrilla fighters, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time that I was reading this book, I was driving a Grand Cherokee. So, 100 and some odd years later, I'm driving a vehicle named after the Cherokee tribe, and who were brave warriors, whatever else you would say about them, but also terrible, right? And I'm thinking, in 100 years, are we going to be driving the Chevy Taliban? Right? There's something about that was just, there was something very surreal about reading the stories of that period. And then here we are driving around in vehicles called Apaches or Comanches or Cherokees. And there's something woefully unself-aware about an American advertising ethos that would even do that.
Mark Parker, you've been waiting a while. How are you doing? Are you able to speak?
Yeah, I'm just enjoying listening to Rod. I had a similar experience, I suppose. As you expose yourself to history, that I guess you guys are young enough. You've lived with the, I guess you would call it the counter narrative for a long time. You grew up in it. You've always heard the other side.
Yeah.
And you've probably, in fact, if anything, you probably didn't get enough a balance of what it was like to be on the colonialist or settler side of the equation, because
Yeah.
we have mass media has so emphasized the um, oppressed indigenous narrative. That's important. It's so yeah. It's good to get both, but I might had a similar experience though, because I grew up in my formative years is in childhood anywhere were John Wayne and TV westerns and all that kind of thing, which and then somewhere along the lines in the 80s, I suppose, it started to correct. Go ahead.
Well, it's funny because Rod was telling the story of that book, and I thought he was describing the plot of The Searchers, but I guess it was a little bit different in The Searchers.
I wouldn't be surprised if they based it on on the real story. The history was there. They knew about it. It's just, it does sound pretty much like.
Maybe Searchers is a little more affirming of the story, like using the puzzle pieces that we've been playing with in this stream. It's a little more affirming of the original story, and maybe that book is a little more an authentic portrayal of a very different, before we had a story where it was just facts on the ground and it was really raw and chaotic and dark, and there weren't heroes and villains so much as or maybe there were villains, but not a lot of heroes on any side. And it's striking us because there's folks our age, like millennials. The story Rod's describing is that that kind of is the story in a way. It's not I don't know if we do it as a counter narrative, like you said, Mark, and maybe there was an earlier anti-story that really kind of reaffirmed the story, so to speak, where we just said, actually, the U.S. was the bad guy the whole time, and maybe we started to, the colonists were the European settlers were the unique moral evil for the foundation story, the one and only moral evil, and we kind of grew up in that. And maybe there was an earlier time where that was kind of, because I'm playing with anti-story is like you're still taking the same framing, but you're going to identify with the villain rather than the hero. That's what the anti-story kind of approach is. And that's what this is. There was a liberal anti-story, is all I'm saying. Maybe no, I don't want to say liberal, but there was like a reactionary, progressive anti-story, and we were kind of raised on that, and that became the story.
Yeah, I think sussing out story from anti-story is very difficult. I think that like what Mark said was making me think of like the way that I kind of swung, much like Kanye, I guess. In my understand, like, because my experience, similar to Rod's, was kind of finding out about slavery, and that was kind of every millennial's like, oh wow, the flag we pledge to, has this dark, this horrible, dark side, this shadow. But then being in the South, I feel like it complexified it a lot. Like growing up in the deep South with very low class family members and peers, that it was kind of a more nuanced of like the story of the South is, cannot simply be told, or I can't tell my life story through the lens of the Civil War. Like there are things from the Civil War that played an impact on my life,
and I did hear family members use slurs and display real acts of racism. But I think that the like thing that's maybe hard for us that we're I don't think we're dancing around it consciously, but I feel like it should be said if it hasn't been said. But like there is just like a simplicity to the fact of like yeah, there's only one true myth, right? And it's Christ. And all other myths, to the extent that they're true, share their truthiness because they point to Christ. And then there's also like racism is bad, um, because we're all made from like we're all made in the image of God, and that's just kind of like I think all of the complexity comes from a type of need for discernment of like which parts of our culture are um you know influenced by Christendom in a way that is edifying to everyone, or which ways have been poisoned in certain ways, and in which ways are we failing to love our neighbor through the very kind of societies that allow us to have neighbors. That's what keeps coming up for me, is just like the two obvious things of like, yeah, despite the vacillations between having actual racist family members, learning about the history of slavery, becoming McWoke, quote unquote, but then also seeing how that kind of focus on group politics and group identity can lead to toxic ideas regarding why things happen in the world, and then lead to toxic actions by over identifying with a group that doesn't necessarily have what's best for you in mind. Um, yeah, so like all of that kind of I think is what leads me to want to fall back on almost like a type of fundamentalism that says like story anti-story, we preach Christ crucified, what else is new, kind of a thing.
I think Jacob's comment, it's far back up now. You might not be able to bring it up. He says the World War II narrative was the temporary crutch people in the 60s and 70s used to replace Christianity. It was a bad replacement. And that's Jacob saying that. I think speaks to what you're pointing out.
Must have been pretty bad if it was worse than Christianity.
Well, McMo, since you brought up the South, it's been an interesting experience being basically a coastal boy, raised by New Englanders in Southern California, and then going to school on the East Coast and living there for another 15 or 20 years. So basically, and then back to California. Most of my life I've spent on one coast or the other. And then here recently, I'm now a resident of the South. And it is palpable how little I understood about the culture of the South until I actually got here. And I'm not claiming to understand it now, but it is, I'm so glad I did that, besides the obvious reason, which is I met a woman. But, it's been this incredibly enriching experience. And so, yeah, going through the Deep South in particular and seeing all the memorials and the statues and learning when those were erected, I had a naive idea that they were erected shortly after the Civil War, and discovering like, no, there was this huge explosion of those being put up in the early 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
And
as we needed a foundation myth. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I don't know what made me think of it, but, you have, again, if you're not from this part of the world and you have this idea that like, well, the South was just full of slaveholders, right? So I remember one day I Googled what percentage at its peak, what percentage of Southerners owned slaves. And the interesting thing is the first thing that Google did is gave me about a page worth of links to tell me why I shouldn't be asking that question. Speaking of foundational myths, right? So I dug a little bit, and it's about 25%. And I don't know what I thought the number was, but I didn't think it was 25%. If I had some sort of an image in my head, I would have assumed a significantly higher number. And so then I'm thinking,
of that 25%, it would be guys owning like one or two.
Right.
and of the population of African slaves, the majority are owned, by a few families.
Right, large plantations. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I'm thinking, like, all those boys that that ran into the bullets, and all those boys that were writing letters back home. Do we have those letters? How many of them were fighting to keep the Negro down? Right. So at one level, of course, I understand politically that this was very much about, as the states were jockeying, there would be free states and slave states. This became a very political issue in the first half of the 19th century. So obviously, at one level, it clearly was a war over slavery, right? But then you think about all the boys that fought and died in that war on both sides, and you have to ask yourself, well, what else was it about, right? And so even something like that, just a nuanced discussion about that period, that stain in America's history, and did America become less racist after the Civil War, or did Jim Crow actually double down on the racism, right? So anyway, like even things like that, like I wouldn't even have occurred to me to think about it. But now that I live here, and a mile from here is one of the great battle sites, the Battle of Nashville. So it suddenly you just have a lot more texture and a lot more appreciation that history is complicated and these foundational
Rod,
myths are complicated.
but the silly thing about Nashville is that a few miles from that is a recreation of the Parthenon.
I know that is embarrassing.
Foundational
myth. 1-to-1 scale.
Yeah. It's quite an amazing building, but wow, not particularly creative.
Well, that's what the conservatives want, right? They just want us to rebuild all the photos from crumbling Greco-Roman culture. But yeah, like there is a weird way. I mean, and this is true. I think if you just stay in one place for long enough, you start seeing how like the foundational myth is like inherently foundational, but it's also like a myth in both senses of the word, right? Like it's a myth in the sense that it's like this larger than life thing, but then sometimes it's just this myth as in like, oh, this does not actually help anybody. Like this, like for instance, if you've ever lived in what's quote unquote a college town or a party city, there's a way in which that kind of understanding of a location brings out some, like there's pros and cons, right? To every kind of identification in that sense. But it's interesting to me that there's similar dynamics that went on with the people that I grew up with, where you have some people who genuinely do not trust and do not like those who are different than them. And it's not just skin color and it's not just culture. It's sometimes both, if not all. But my wife just got home from work. So I'm trying to say something about the nuance and complexity of the individual versus the group versus the foundational myth.
Well, yeah, to put a bow on my contribution here, all of these things for me have been deepening and generative, and have helped me have a much deeper appreciation for the complexities of life and the human condition. And so for me, it's all been very positive. So I named my little project Nuance Forum for a reason, right? I loved to be able to go deeper and explore and learn more. And so it's never had a negative effect on me to discover something that I didn't know about something that caused me to rethink my assumptions.
I'm trying to find a way to phrase the question. Let me just ask it the way that it comes back. What's the good of seeking the complexity? Because I can sort of imagine why, it's enriching to deepen your understanding of the myths, but I don't have a way of articulating the good that it does.
Well,
yeah, because we're highlighting that not all complexity is equal in a way, because not all complexity has some complexity corrode things that you were kind of taking for granted that shouldn't be corroded. That and
Yeah.
some are what you build your house on, and maybe you didn't realize the house was built on it. till after you dissolved it.
Part of
So
the reason I focused on a personal story is because it's like all I feel really qualified to speak about in a way.
Yeah.
Even to your point about, I would need to know the agenda of someone who's pushing a particular narrative, right?
Mhm.
If you're hell bent on mayhem and destruction, if you're causing children to question something as foundational as their identity or their gender, like I want nothing to do with you, right? Um, so it absolutely can be destructive, and my sense is that has been weaponized by activists, right? So I'm certainly not here being Pollyanna about the way people can weaponize narratives or counter narratives. What I can do is for myself is, I love being reminded that, I only barely know what I'm talking about most of the time, right? And so it keeps me from ever, thinking my shit doesn't stink, right? And I think that's good for me. So, um, you know, dealing in shades of gray, recognizing that almost everything about life is complicated, and it makes me way less likely from our stream, the recent Luke stream, way less likely to be self-righteous. Again, personally, is good for me to never get too high on my high horse about any particular subject, right? So I see it as being a positive thing whenever I'm being forced to reevaluate something that I thought I, had pretty well figured out.
Yeah, it sounds like if you start with a posture of humility, the constructions isn't as doesn't have to be as painful as it can be if you're starting from a posture of I know everything, and then it turns
that's
out
good.
thought you knew isn't actually true.
You don't fall as far if you're already humble. If you already self humbling by putting yourself closer to the ground, you don't have to fall as far.
Well, and
That's far.
I've lived old to be old enough and long enough. I've had enough experiences that have shaken me to my core. Um, I remember there was a point in my life where, it's too long a story to tell here, but it came right in the middle of my life and made me reevaluate pretty much everything about the direction I had taken with my life to that point. And there was a temptation to hibernate, to hide, to treat it as shameful, to be embarrassed about it, just in the broad category of a business setback, right, for a man of a certain age, right, and having to rebuild, right. And what I decided to do is tell everybody that I ever encountered, if you knew me for 5 minutes, I was going to tell you the story about what I've been through, and that I was rebuilding. And at first that was really hard to do because I was embarrassed. I got like many, I got caught up in the 2008 financial crisis, but I had a very unique perspective, which is that I was running a fund and we had all of our money with Lehman Brothers. So I was literally, I had a front row seat for that. We were one of the early people to get a phone call on that Monday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning saying we're frozen. We didn't know what that meant. We learned what that meant. The money was gone. And so suddenly I'm 40 years old and rebuilding, right? And so what I decided to do as I was rebuilding is to tell anybody that I encountered as I, new business contacts or whatever I was doing, to tell them what I'd been through. And it was remarkable how much that opened up every conversation I had. Everybody relaxed. People, their shoulders would relax. They would start to tell stories themselves about what they had gone through. It had this amazing effect of helping me connect with people, and it destigmatized. Obviously I was going through something. My particular version of it was unique to me, but obviously many were going through something similar. And I rebuilt a business out of the ashes of that has become, one of the most rewarding things in my life. Right. So that was one of those cases where the temptation to, to let pride decide how I would conduct myself. And so now I embrace the opportunities to be reminded once again that I can be wrong, or that events can take over. I can be taken out by things that I have no control over, or things that I do have control over. My best intentions can end up with terrible results, and a really good idea can end up badly, and a mediocre idea can end up inspired, right? And so you just kind of show up and try to serve the situation as best you can.
Similar to what we're saying about what Pajot says about Christ and how that conflagration, if the foundation myth can be internalized in a way so that you could have an individual story that properly reorients the conflagration towards a productive end and doesn't involve you sparking nuclear war or something to externalize it. Like you're actually kind of pointing at something really interesting, Rod, where you're maybe on a more horizontal level, but like if you could have if your personal life journey, even if it's if it's built on your career, can have a foundation myth, and maybe with a ashes and then rising from the ashes kind of foundation myth, that kind of helps things.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it could have gone differently. So it was a scary thing to do at the time, and I probably still hibernated some, just because I'm a man and I was licking my wounds. But I really fought that instinct to try to just allow people to join me in the journey of rebuilding, right? And so that hopefully you're seeing the connection I'm making to whenever I discover something that reminds me that I don't know as much as I thought I did. It actually makes me laugh. It's like, right? It actually has a positive effect on me. So I enjoy it. Now I seek it out. You'll probably notice the way I participate even here, right? Is like, it's so much fun for me to encounter all these people who are just ridiculously smart and knowledgeable about, a lot of disproportionate knowledge around here, right? And it's, I just love it because I learned so much.
Thanks for joining, Rod. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on if you're me or not, I'm going to have to end this stream because I've got a date with my wife. So let's do final words. I'm uploading, I'm bouncing and uploading the track that I basically made and what the equivalent of 30 spare minutes here and there throughout the stream. So we'll hang on for the ride to see if it's any good. But with that, let's go ahead and do last words, and we'll start with age, not looks. And so Mark Parker, you go first, and then Rod, Matthew, Skankenstein, and then Tayo.
Well, there's not a lot to say. I mean, there's a lot I could say. I mean, Matt C. thought I would try to rebuild the consensus or something, cobble it together or something.
Oh, come on, Mark. I wanted to see you try. I thought you would have done a good job.
Why did he see me try? Well, we'll have to save that for another time, I guess, because there's not enough time to try. I just think the last will be first and the first will be last is a wheel. And as soon as you're on top, you're destined for the bottom. And I think that's what we're seeing with all of this narrative, counter-narrative stuff. And my literary hero remains, in American fiction writing, remains Ernest Hemingway, whose entire purpose in life was to try to tell it straight and true, and in the purest possible sense. And then people will perpetually argue that he never told the truth once. So, but I think that's what I think we were shooting for when we opened up the our worldview in the way that Rod was describing about learning, having a more complex understanding of American history, is we were trying just tell it straight. Stop and my last thought is that's probably when progressives fail.
There's a date, Mark, in 5 other people.
No, it's good. You're good. Keep going, Mark. Tayo, this is my stream, bro. Don't
Let
make
me
me you rebuke you in public. Like it's my day, it's my stream, damn it.
It's
We'll
my
get there
day.
when we get there.
All I was going to close. I was
He's
just going to
saving it.
finish. I was just going to finish with saying that I think that's probably where the progressives started to fail. Somewhere in the late Obama administration, I guess, is when they stopped telling it straight, and it became all about they began to sacrifice the truth for the narrative they were pushing. However, previously underserved, but they and well intended, but they started they traded the truth for a lie, and I think that's where they started to fall apart. And now the woke right, is doing exactly the same thing. It's all bullshit.
Mr. Rod, what say you, sir?
For another time, Mark will compare stories about Ernest Hemingway because he was very influential for me as a young man as well.
Anytime. That'd be great.
I've done enough final thoughts, so I'll a Saturday night date night's way more important. You've heard my final thoughts already. It's been a pleasure jumping on with you guys.
Yeah, but I need some good stories for the wife. So if it's short, feel free. But if
no,
not,
it's good. No, you've got them. I already summed up, so you're good.
Matt C, what say you, sir? Thank you for being the you were the energy, if not the essence of this stream. Not to get us into choppy waters, but
Terrible.
what say you, sir?
I think Mark D. Parker is always the wind beneath my wings. So if you're inspired by me, I'm just pointing to a greater one than myself. I really think it's fascinating that we had this idea that we had to code the gospel so that it would be palatable to progressives, and that was a calculus we made to have a seat at the table, but also, frankly, probably to make it palatable to ourselves in the post-war consensus world. We had to make it a little easier for it to go down, and I'm wondering if we got to code, like, what was the problem that we coded it at all? Is it even possible to make it completely uncoded? I think we explored that. Maybe what does it look like to code the true gospel in a way that's palatable for these kids that are exploring the anti-story, or kids that are just like post, the deconstruction kids, and so that, to make sure that they're not reconstructing in a way that's just parodying or like identifying with the villain of the archetype that they're attempting to reject, which is a really tragic, snake eating its own tail kind of destructive fallacy. Can we be winsome? Can we be seeker sensitive to those kids? What does that look like without compromising?
Sounds like a job for Christian absurdism.
Yep.
Matt Stankenstein, what say you?
I really want to respond to Matt C. I feel like there's a lot we can do. Like diving into images of like Jesus harrowing hell, things like that. The fact that often part of the story of the gospel is Jesus on the cross being coded as the villain. There's a lot that can be done there. The fact that it leads on images of Jesus, or one of the types of Christ is not King David, but also Absalom, the rebellious king who dies hanging on a tree. There's a lot there. Because I think the gospel is such a true story that it can be coded in just about any culture. I think that's one of the brilliancies of it. So anyway, I'd love to keep talking about that some other time, but like there's definitely a lot there to play
Hell of
with.
a last word. Hell of a last word. Great job. Tayo, finish us out, sir. Give us the final definitive word. Kanye, good guy or bad guy?
Kanye, like you and I, is a son of God, in the good words of Sherry. and we should pray for him. And also, we should donate to the Ko-Fi link, McMo's Ko-Fi link, and pick up a copy of Kyrie 1, 2, 3, and 4 to say thank you to Matsy for being the engine behind this stream. On to me, it's hilarious to watch the woke right label causes such a a spiral in the right wing online community, the way the term woke caused a spiral in the left wing community. So, LARP, LARPod, and Grift. Thank you all.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Tayo, for holding down the whole stream with me. I mean, it made me really wish that I just had given you like admin powers, and then I could just go on this date with my wife, and you guys could keep talking. Especially since we didn't have. Oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to remember his name. I'm too flustered. I can't think of it. What is it? It's who gives the best. Why can't I think of his name now? I can see his face. I can hear his voice. Well, that's
The
too
best
bad.
outros?
Is it Mark? No, it's not Mark S. Yeah. Tayo gave this guy a run for his money, but now I'm blanking on his name and I feel horrible. What a faux pas. How embarrassing. Anyway, here's the beat.
It's completely destructive. Praise God, you went through the other route, which is the route of maturation. But there is, I'm surrounded by which is resentment, Matsy.
I don't know. Do you guys hear that? It should be playing.
People are
Oh, yeah.
the God that you feel
We out here.
that leads you all the resentments towards them.
Those millennials, man. You were born in the 80s?
So many non-passing control tests. Can they see a video title that doesn't make perfect sense and not make a comment about it? So many people fail. Yeah, it's not a cookout. It's not a cookout either. You might fire. It makes you wonder if the date's even that close. Fantastic.
Now you're making us check.
I actually did check out. I missed that one.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I'm kind of torn. I think the conversation has reached a pretty nice wilting point. So I'll probably take a deep breath and call it a day. We got lots of people from high five. We got lots of people engaged. I don't want to end the combo. Everybody's having
the frontier and the patriarch.
Keep it going. I think
returns to find
I'm waiting. I'm hoping Mark D. Parker shows
everything's
up.
gone and burned to the ground and massacred.
I don't know if he'll have anything to say about Kanye, but the post-war consensus, that's been part of his career.
Kidnap
Being on TLC.
girls, adolescent girls of a certain age.
Yeah, I'd love to hear his thoughts. I feel like he's going to try and he's going to cobble together the
stories about this man.
Try to put it back together.
For his daughter,
I'd love to see it.
And she
almost ready. It's not working on my phone.
Another, I guess, like tool to throw on the radar of a much smaller stature. Are you guys familiar with the guy Gavin McInnes, the founder of Vice?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, he's very similar, like becoming playing the villain that he's been cast as for a long time. Just watched a recent documentary, and
the story
that's trying to make sense of the big, I don't know how to describe it, but heel turn politically that he's taking last leader. And it's interesting that you have another already very abrasive shock jock type guy who is on this, at least adopting a far right populist.
They would be the Taliban of the 19th century, right? They were toward the end. They resorted to really horrific tactics because they were outgunned and outgunned.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff is at play. Like prolificity is at play. The thing is, like,
and so
there's questions of the fool versus the troll versus the actual villain, right? Like,
and at the time that I was reading,
whatever you say about Hitler, he was an actual villain. I think, like, not to say that he wasn't a human being or maybe a god or anything like that, but I want to say, and maybe that is just the heart of the post-war consensus that like Hitler is the villain, and that's really the only thing we can agree on.
Terrible, right? And I'm thinking in 100 years, are we going to be driving officially bigger project around the field was called
Oh my goodness.
There's something
He's the devil we cast out.
Well, welcome, Rod. Can we get a voice check from you there, Rod, just to make sure it's you?
You can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can. And I'm glad I got
wonderful. Mark Parker, you're good to speak.
I'm just enjoying listening to Rod.
This is fairly esoteric subject for me, but I thought I would tell a story. But I think
you guys are young enough to play this.
founding myths and all that kind of stuff. So years ago, I did a
get both. I really, I might have had a similar experience though, because I grew up in the my formative years and childhood anywhere.
There's
a John Wayne.
There's a something like a got me to, you know, like a rethink, like one of those, like my assumptions,
which
tourist information.
And then somewhere along the lines of the 80s, I suppose.
What's the? I'm trying to find a way to phrase the question. What's
it's
the?
funny because Rod was telling the story of that book, and
what's the good of secular complexity? Because I can sort of imagine why, you know, it's enriching to deepen your understanding of the myths.
The history was there.
But I don't have the way of articulating the good that it does.
Well,
yeah, because we're highlighting that not all complexity is equal in a way, because not all complexity has some
as we always love us and our Savior Jesus Christ.